Hello, 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 everyone. We will get started in about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Hello, Adams. Hello, Frazee. Hello, Chris. Chris, I heard the wah. I think that's what you were going for. Good use of good use of the subscriber emoji there. Excellent work. Hey, Kasava. Hey, Laylo. Hey, Charlie. Welcome. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Happy Wednesday, everyone. It is Wednesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday. This week has been going really fast. Hey, Designer Trash. Welcome. Thank you for the follow, Trash. I like your username, by the way. All right. Happy Wednesday. As I said before, I hope everyone is having a good week. Good to have you, Trash. Yeah, no worries. No worries, hook a girl up. Prep your dinner, absolutely. Hey, turn down. Hey, piece of shoot. Yeah, so happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a good week. It's been going pretty quickly for me. I'm sure it's going quickly for you, especially if you are on the hunt, as many viewers are. If you're not sure what I'm talking about when I say the hunt, feel free to type exclamation point Leon in chat to learn more about 100 Devs, which is the free online program that many of us are participating in. Um, and yeah, basically it helps you take you from zero to full stack web developer and get you a job at the end of it. So we are at the end of it for many of the folks involved in this program, and so working on getting a job. Sweater season, let's go. Yes, absolutely. It is fall and I am cold all the time. Fall is not my favorite season. I love the colors on the trees, but I'm so cold all the time. So, yes, it is 100% sweater season 100% of the time for me at the moment. Hey, Jenna, welcome. Yeah, it's blanket and chair time. Yeah, so you may not know, but when I do my streams, I am standing up all the time. I'm standing. I do have a chair, but if I were to sit down, it would not. You wouldn't be able to see me. You'd see the top of my head. So, yeah. So I can't really do the blanket thing unless I wanted to, wear like a cape. But capes should be a thing. Capes should be more popular. But alas, they are not. So I have to make do with a hoodie instead. Yep, yep. Standing 100% of the time. I am ergonomically correct, though. I have everything at the right heights. My monitors are at the right heights. I have soft foam mats underneath my feet. So I really do try to stay ergonomic, but standing is good for me. Probably most of you on the stream do know I'm currently employed as a developer. I'm not looking for another job through 100 devs, but that doesn't mean I can't help. You all find jobs. So yeah, I'm currently a senior SQL dev or senior business intelligence developer, which is my official job title. And so yeah, I spend most of the day or all of the day sitting. And so I feel like when I do these streams, it's important to take care of my body and give myself some physical variety. And so yeah, I do stand for these because I figure it's better for me, so I don't become a gargoyle by the age of 35. Hook a girl up. You better save me some of that curry and naan that you're making. I love naan so much. Been studying Linux this week. Need to get back to the hunt. No, why are you studying Linux? Just for funsies? Capes and capes should totes make a comeback. I do agree. Yeah. I'm usually hunched over like a shrimp gremlin during your streams. Yeah, so do just as a reminder for everybody while you're on the hunt and you're probably spending a lot of time in front of your computer on LinkedIn, hunting down, job postings and doing your hit list and things like that. Please do try to take care of your body. Get up and stretch. Roll your neck occasionally, roll your wrists. Try to be ergonomic with your use of the mouse and keyboard. I learned that lesson when I had horrible pain in my hand just because I was using a mouse so much. And so, just try to be as ergonomic as you can. Standing snuggie action. Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. The snuggie stream. Interesting idea. Need a space heater? Yeah, well, actually, so I'm actually kind of counting on my on the 3070 that I have in my tower here to really make a difference in the temperature of the room that I'm in. I think it will. I think my 3070 will serve as a space heater over the winter. Work at a farm all day, so I'm glad to sit down. Oh wow, yeah, yeah. You just whatever you do, you just need variety, right? You need variety in your body throughout the day. You got to just even if it's just getting up and stretching occasionally or something. Just if you spend most of the day standing, then sit down at the end of the day, and keep yourself limber as you can. Hey, Interplanet, welcome. Hey, Sazi. Hey, KNH. Good to see you. Yeah. So, for those of you who are doing job hunt right now, how are we feeling? So Leon did a tremendously entertaining hit list stream yesterday. Um, you know, Sending out 30 messages in the span of 3 hours, which is very interesting to see. Um, and Yeah, so how are we feeling about the hunt so far? The girl says, I want to do cloud full stack dev and learn Kubernetes. Kubernetes? I don't know how to say that, but I know what it is. I just never said it out loud before. Uh, Linux, Docker. Okay. So much to study. Yeah. Hey, if you've got a goal, go for it. Absolutely. Especially Vim. Okay. I commend you. Turn down says, I have not studied banking nearly enough to feel comfortable. Scary. Send out messages. Yeah. All right, good goob. Even if they are telling you to apply, that's still progress, right? So keep going. Send out more. Haven't been comfy doing Banki just yet. Okay, well, that's why we're here. We're going to be doing more Banki. We've done several of these streams. So if you're just getting started with Banki now, I do have several previous Banki streams. Some of them are still on Twitch. You can find most of my past videos on YouTube, exclamation point YouTube. If you just search for ones with Banki in the title, that should give you some stuff to work with there. Um, Designer says, this is my first exposure to Banki. Okay, all right, cool. I'm says he says, I'm in the catch-up crew, but I'm also here to learn. Yeah, you're never too early to start Banki. I believe it was first assigned back in like April or May for the people who are current with the cohort. So you are just on time. Had a recruiter chat today that turned into a behavioral interview. Wow, shook but feeling good. Nice. There are people that meet every day. Yes, and that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Turned down. So, for those of you who want to practice Banki or just listen to other people do Banki out loud with each other, there are several groups that meet on the 100 Devs Discord. Exclamation point Leon, if you want to get access to our Discord. Yeah, there are people that meet every day in the Discord to study. Several different groups. There's a women's group. There's several general groups. There's a Banki voice channel. So whatever fits your fancy, you can practice there, or just sit in on the channel and listen. That's fine too. I've been trying Bank. So Welcome says I've been trying Banki daily for the past couple weeks, and it really helps to build knowledge and confidence. Starting to feel a little stronger with it each day. Yes, that is the goal. Is the practice, right? It's gonna feel weird at first. It just will. There's no getting around that. You're gonna see these questions. You're gonna be like, how the flip do I answer them? And so, yeah, we're going to be practicing the behavioral section of Banki today, which we've done before, right? This may be repetition for some folks, but repetition is the point of Banki. And I don't know about you, but the behavioral questions are often the hardest for folks to answer because they do not have a concrete answer. So you can find answer keys to the bank, to Banki online. People have posted them on GitHub, on Twitter, elsewhere. Um, and so that can be great for the technical part of the bank is like I don't know stuff like what are the building blocks of HTML5, right? Like that has an answer, but something like um, tell me about a time when you failed. Well, you can't find that online. Um, that has to be your answer to that question, right? So, Ruth says, IDK, what is Banki? Yes. So, for those of you who are doing 100 devs, or if you are looking for a job, or even thinking about looking for a job, the bank or Banki is a set of questions that often come up in job interviews, some of them behavioral, some of them technical. And if you have, oh, I'm terribly sorry, I have a phone call and I do have to take it. Give me one moment, please. Hey, folks. Sorry about that. So, I am actually on call for work today. So, I told you before I'm a developer, and I am on call for work this week. And so, I may get a phone call, which I will have to answer during the stream. However, this was not, this was a spam call, but I have to be sure. I have to answer any of the calls that I get. So, yes. And thank you for answering Ruth's question there, which I got interrupted by the spam call. So, someone did a git push force rascal. What are you referring to there? If we're doing confession, Mavi says if we're doing confessions, I'm mad at my search bar and I need a break. Yeah. Well, we're gonna have a chill stream today. We are just gonna be working on solely on the behavioral questions. There's a lot of questions in the bank, but the behavioral questions are by far the most important. And so, what I want to do, we've done Banky streams before. Where I have gone through these behavioral questions and I have answered them based on my own experience. Um, However, what I'd like to do today, and we'll see if this works out, is I'd like to hear from some of you about your backgrounds, and especially if you have backgrounds that may be not related to tech. And so maybe I want to hear about your background, maybe what your 100 hours project is, and we'll try to kind of pull that apart and see if we can make it fit these behavioral questions and kind of tease apart that your past work history and see how we can shape it to make sure that you're able to answer these behavioral questions. So if you have if you're struggling with making your work history fit these behavioral questions, you're not sure how to make it, how to shoehorn it into these questions, that's what I kind of want to work on tonight. Hey, MME, welcome. All right. So, yeah, as I said, I want to hear from you. So, who is having trouble? Who has a history that they'd like me to take a look at? I mean, you don't have to give me your whole life story, just kind of giving me a general feel of like, what have you done in the past, and especially if you're struggling with how to answer the Banky behavioral questions. And I'll put those up on the screen here in a minute. So let me know. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and just switch to the behavioral questions. I'll make that a little bit bigger. So these are if you're not familiar with the Banki, these are the types of questions that tend to come up quite a bit in interviews. Now, I will tell you, You might say, well, but we've already started practicing coding challenges. So why do I need to worry about this behavioral stuff, right? I'm interviewing to be a developer. Why do they care about these behavioral questions? Well, behavioral questions are extremely important because the interviewer doesn't really want to know if you can reverse an array. What they really want to know is, do you have the ability to work well with the group? Do you have ability to explain your thought process? Are you logical? Can you learn? Are you adaptable? And those are all quote unquote soft skills. And so that's what these behavioral questions are meant to cover. And when I did my interview for a senior role, um, I all of my questions except one were questions that were basically the ones on this list. Like I went through several rounds of interviews, and it was behavioral questions all the way down. There was one technical question where I was asked to read a SQL statement because I'm, SQL developer. I was asked to read a SQL statement and just say in general terms, like in pseudocode terms, what it was doing. And that was it. I wasn't asked to whiteboard anything. I wasn't asked to, write a SQL statement and run it. I was just given one, and they asked me, "What does this do?" And the rest of the questions were all behavioral. So these are really important to be able to answer. All right, so we've got one here from This Is Jason. You're a doctor of physical therapy. Deaf, not sure how to relate to tech. Aha, I'm glad you said that. Okay, because these behavioral questions, you don't necessarily have to relate them to tech. Really, as long as you can dig into your history and um, pull out relevant examples, regardless of whether they relate to tech, then you can answer these questions. So, for example, like number 9, tell me about a situation when you were responsible for project planning. Did everything go according to plan? If not, then what kind of counteractions did you have to take? Yeah, so as a physical therapist, I'm sure you've had to deal with scheduling, especially maybe during COVID. I'm sure there were considerations for setting up schedules with extra cleaning and extra precautions so that people stayed safe in your office, in your practice. And so I'm sure that you had to do a bunch of planning around that probably, and change schedules around, and deal with staffing issues, people out being sick, maybe dealing with customers that were less than compliant with the regulations that you may have set up in your office. So how did you deal with that? And that so answering that kind of question would show how you deal with people, how you're able to, deal with people in stressful situations, how you're able to deal with rapidly changing circumstances, how you're able to handle multiple competing priorities. So, Jason, does that resonate with you at all? What are some of the when's a time as a physical therapist that you may have had to plan some kind of a project, or um, deal with a spanner in the works as far as something that you tried and maybe didn't go to plan? Let me scroll up here, make sure I didn't miss anything. Calabar says, I just got here. Are you saving the answers in a doc and sharing it later? We're probably mostly just going to do, a verbal back and forth here. Since we're going to be doing the behavioral questions, a lot of those are going to be specific to the person. But hopefully that can give you some inspiration on how to answer them yourself with your own experience. Turn Down says, I figure it's going to be easy. I was a live demonstrator for 15 years, a pitch man. Oh, that is so cool. Yeah. So I kind of thought I'd BS my way through the behavioral. So Turn Down, I understand you're probably very good at standing in front of folks and talking, but you probably still want to have some kind of a roadmap to make sure that you are truly, selling yourself in the best light here when you're talking about your accomplishments. So, it may come easily for you, but I would still suggest practicing and making sure that you're highlighting the things you want to highlight. Because yeah, you might be good at, BSing, but you might BS on the wrong things. And Piece of Shoot reminds us that soft skills get most of the jobs. Absolutely, they do. So in my case, like I said, my first dev role, was at the senior level, and I think it's because I was able to pretty confidently answer behavioral questions. I might not have gotten the role if I didn't show that I had the capacity to learn and grow and work well with a group and really vibe with that group. If I wouldn't have been a good fit, they wouldn't have hired me at the level I was, because I certainly didn't meet the technical requirements for the job. I didn't think I was ready for a senior role. No way. I almost took myself out of the game. I was like, no, screw that. I'm not ready for that. Maybe I could be an analyst or something, but I can't be a senior developer. And then one of my coworkers was like, yeah, try it, right? Just go. Like, what's the harm? And that's what Leon says, and it's true. Don't take yourself out of the game. Let them take you out of the game, because you never know when you're going to be just what they were looking for, even if you don't strictly meet the requirements in the job description. Mommy says, if someone asks me if I can code under pressure, is it okay if I just show them one project with the under pressure? Ha, nice. Uh, Carla says, I was a bartender prior to COVID. Ooh, that's a good one. Service industry jobs, like especially in like food service, are really great for answering these behavioral questions. Absolutely. I love it when people say they were in service industry jobs, because you can work under pressure, you can work with people, you can balance multiple priorities, you can work with shifting timelines and schedules. You can generally have a pretty extensive like mental inventory of the things you're supposed to be doing and when you're supposed to be doing it, keeping orders in your head, um, you know balancing doing payouts and taking orders and that kind of thing. um, Especially, that's a great, you probably have an excellent answer for number 12 here, working effectively under pressure, because I feel like the entire service industry is nothing but pressure. um, and dealing with interpersonal conflicts, managerial conflicts. I feel like you could probably have answers for most of these. However, I'm happy to help you craft those answers if that's something that you need help with. Ruth says, I'm new in 100 devs. I'm confused about where I should start. No worries, Ruth. That's fine. Yeah. Definitely check out the Discord. Absolutely. And someone has given you that link. It's a great place to start. The Discord is a wonderful place. It's extremely active. Once you're in there, be sure to check out the Read First channel, and click all the emojis, and then head over to the Catch Up Crew channel, where you'll find a bunch of like minded individuals there. Yeah, retail is another great service industry and retail. They can give you some great answers to these questions. Uh, that one is hard for me. So, talking about project planning, I was a trucker for 7 years, and planning a trip is just not difficult. Really? You say it's not difficult, but maybe that's just because you're good at it. So, I'm sure that not every trip that you ever planned went perfectly the way it was supposed to. Maybe there was construction, maybe there was an accident. So, what do you do to get around that? So, if you're really good at something, it's important to not disregard it just because it seems easy for you. What's important to do is kind of pull that apart and think about your process. What makes it easy? How do you how are you so good at it? What steps do you take? And so that can be when you can have a lot of confidence in your answer to this question, to say like, yes, so I actually, so you could say, yes, in my previous role as a trucker, pretty much every trip that I took was a project. We had, whenever I planned out a trip, I had to consider variables X, Y, and Z, and in order to make sure that I was accounting for all of these variables, maybe I did a trip log or something like that, or I planned out my timelines. Here's how I determined which route I was going to take, and occasionally there would be an accident on that route or a detour, and here's how I would handle that. So yeah, if you're good at something, it's important. So that's a mistake I think a lot of people make. If you're good at something, you think it's easy, and therefore you discount it. So but if it's easy for you, then that just means you're good at it. So what makes it easy? What's your process? How do you do it? Be proud of that, the fact that it's easy for you. Wow, designer trash, you've got a lot. You've got an interesting history. Previously, are you so designer? Are you struggling to fit your history to these questions? If you have any specific ones you're struggling with, feel free to let me know. So low poly requested reviewing question 18. Okay. Tell me about your dream job. What do you want to do with your career? Yeah, so this one might be a little bit more standard for folks. So in this one, I would suggest emphasizing your passion for developing. Um, say like, well, in the last over the since I've been transitioning out of whatever your previous role was, I've been constantly cultivating my passion for web development, and I've just been picking up more and more information along the way. For example, and then here you might highlight one of your recent projects to say like, yeah, and for example, recently I built whatever your 100 hours project is. Recently I built my 100 hours project. You wouldn't call it that, but whatever it was. Recently I built this app that allows me to provide a better lifeline between animal shelters and their foster caregivers. And that really even just fueled my passion even more. And so right now, my dream job is just to be here and be a web developer and really expand my knowledge in this space. I am really passionate about this. And what I want to do with my career is just to continue to grow my skills. I'm really also passionate about professional development outside of the workplace. And here you might highlight some of the resources that you've recently visited, maybe an online conference, or even just some recent maybe some of the homeworks that Leanne assigned. Recently I completed a comprehensive course on data structures and algorithms, and so really I'm just rapidly broadening my horizons and finding new things that I enjoy about being a developer. So that's how I might answer that question. Really emphasizing growth, emphasizing learning, and showing off some of the things that you have built. Saying like, look, here's my passion, and I built this stuff. Not because it was part of my job, just because I wanted to, right? And I've been exploring all of these different things about being a developer, I think it so right now your dream job is being a dev. And then what you want to do with your career is you want to keep growing and learning. That's the quick answer. Of course you'll spice it up as you go. This is perfect. I have a phone call tomorrow. Ooh, congratulations. Jason, yes, thank you for that. Thank you for following up. So Jason, yes, is the physical therapist, and they were saying that, um, yeah, those are great answers, Jason. Those are definitely things you can emphasize. So talking about patient treatment schedules changing, that's kind of what I figured, right? Scheduling is hard, especially when you're dealing with scheduling people who might have different ailments, things that they don't disclose, or things come up, and dealing with all the COVID precautions and everything on top of that, keeping everybody safe. That's extremely difficult to juggle. So yeah, I would say that can answer working under pressure. That's a good answer for working under pressure. Talking about balancing patient schedules, people getting mad, people um, disagreeing. How do you keep everybody happy? Um, Project planning, that's the scheduling part. Um, that might cause conflict if schedules are conflicting. That could be an answer for the conflict question as well. Communication, maybe somebody misunderstood the schedule. um, Recently I couldn't treat a patient because the hospital didn't have the right protective equipment. Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like you can answer just with those like few sentences that you shared with me. You can answer a lot of these questions, just pulling it apart and reframing it to fit the specific questions. Hooker Girl Up says, "Wow, senior level out of the gate." Yeah, yeah, and I honestly thought that I would not get it, um, but I didn't take myself out of the game. I went for it anyway, and I got it. So you never know. Same with blah. So if you're a part of 100 devs, blah blah blah. That's their name. They got a senior role out of the gate as well, just because they went for it. Uh, Lord Chriskus says, I want to break from management and leadership roles, so I'm only going for entry level. That's reasonable. That's perfectly reasonable. And actually, what's interesting is that in my interview for the senior role, one of the questions that was asked of me is, are you interested in management? Are you, what's your path? Are you interested in being a sole contributor, diving deep into the technical stuff, or are you more interested in management? And I answered honestly, and I said, I'm really not interested in management at this time. But instead of saying no, I don't want to be a manager, I said, at this time, I really feel like it would be advantageous for me to focus on the work and grow my skills so that I can understand the work being done and understand, and really get my hands dirty and understand the components that go into what we're building here. I feel like if I started out, as a manager or something like that, I might not get that experience and I wouldn't have that connection to the people actually doing the work. So I didn't frame it as I don't want to be a manager. I didn't want to be a manager. I've been a manager before. I did not enjoy it. But I framed it as a positive, as getting more familiar with the work that was being done and getting my hands dirty, so to speak. Um, so I framed it as a preference instead of a negative. And so that's important too. Anytime you can do that, anytime you can say that you're more passionate about one option than the other versus saying that you're not interested in that option. Say that you're more passionate about the other thing and give some reasons why. Find question 4, 8, and 11 particularly difficult. Okay, we can look at those. Yeah. I figure I'm going to have to lie a lot because I'm not a logical thinker. Coding and learning to code was not easy for me. That's really not supposed to be, right? Um, and yeah, it's not that you have to lie. It's just that if you can practice these questions to the point where you can feel confident about your answers, then you can just exude that confidence naturally without having to try. And so that can be really helpful. And Madeline brings up another great point. Service industry people are pretty good communicators too, since they work in teams. Absolutely. The service industry is so perfect for these questions. Yes, you work in teams. Like I said, you work in teams. You communicate. You have interpersonal conflicts with coworkers. You have to work together to complete goals, getting all your tables taken care of by a certain time or getting all the orders out on time, that kind of thing. You work under pressure all the time. You communicate with people, and maybe that communication doesn't always go well. You work on several projects at once all the time. um, you have goals which are generally mandated by management, but they're still goals. So yeah, so many great answers here. So yeah, so 4, 8, and 11, 5. Okay. If I have a choice to job search in North Carolina or New York City, am I greatly hurting my chances of landing a job by choosing North Carolina? Welcome to the stream, by the way. I don't know if I can answer that. I would suggest doing searches in both places and seeing what you get. There's no harm in looking in both, right? And why can't you look for jobs in both places? What's stopping you from? Why do you have to pick one or the other? Why can't you look in both places and see what you get? Let's look at number 5. Let's look at question number 5, and we'll look at some of the other ones as well there. Um, Give an example of a time you had to take a creative and unusual approach to solve a coding problem. How did this idea come to your mind? Why did you think it was unusual? Um, yeah, so this one is maybe a little bit less, strictly behavioral and more, more coding, but you can still answer it. So we've all done coding projects as part of 100 Devs, right? We've all done plenty of coding projects. And so when's a time when you encountered a roadblock or an error, or especially like maybe a feature that you wanted to implement into your 100 Devs, into your 100 hours project? Um, I'm sure that at one point there was a feature that you wanted and you had to figure out how to implement it. Um, and so a general way you could answer this is you could say, well, I was trying to, uh, let's say, I was trying to, I had an existing, backend and API, and I was trying to, get certain buttons to appear on my forms. And so what you could say is that had some buttons, and then maybe you didn't like the look of them. You wanted them to behave differently. So how did this idea come to your mind? Well, you did research. I think doing research is a great answer. You had to do some diligent research, trying out various sources, exploring different options, trying to implement them, reaching out to fellow developers. You don't have to say I talked to people in the to people in the Discord, but you could say I reached out to several fellow developers and we brainstormed together. As far as the why do you think it was unusual, um, that one's a little tougher. That one might be unique to you, to the specific feature you're trying to implement. But you could say, why did you think it was unusual because of whatever specifics of the feature you were trying to implement. I would suggest when you're answering this question, emphasizing collaboration if you can, emphasizing the type of research that you did to find the answer. How did you find that answer? Instead of just saying I Googled it, you could be like, I explored various resources such as the MDN, such as Stack Overflow, which shows that you have access to those resources. You know what they are, you know how to use them, which can be really good. Googling is a skill that not everybody has, right? Not everybody knows how to Google, and especially not everybody knows where to find answers to coding problems. So you can throw some of those names out there. Um, yeah. And if you have, a specific uh, if you have a specific thing that you think might answer this question, we can brainstorm that specifically. Catch up with chat here a little bit. It's been hopping. All right. We've done so much in the past 8 months that no one can doubt our passion for programming. Yeah, absolutely. I run game night for my friends every 2 weeks to play D&D. That's fun, frequently called wrangling cats. Yeah, and I so a lot of folks a lot of developers do enjoy their Dungeons and Dragons and their RPGs and that kind of thing. I don't personally play them, but I do enjoy talking about them and hearing about them. And so, you could say that. You could say, well, you could give an example of your D&D group, and in a problem you had to solve in your D&D group, or interpersonal conflict in your D&D group. That shows that you have outside interests, that you have hobbies, that you have a group of people that you work with regularly and accomplish goals. Right? Job titles are all made up, anyways. Absolutely. Problem is that usually the roadblock is me. In what way, Jazzy? Everything has been done before in coding. Yeah, 100%. Everything has been done before in coding. We are standing on the shoulders of giants. We had a really fun discussion a couple streams ago about the history of like common things like certain keyboard commands and how they go all the way back to teletype machines. So yeah, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Nothing is new. Again, the employer is not asking how did you invent a new button or whatever. How did you invent something new? What they want to know is, can you research, can you learn new things, can you absorb new information and apply that information? So that's the you got to think about, what is the rationale, why is this question being asked, what is the rationale behind it, and try to play to that rationale. So what they're really asking is, can you research, can you learn, can you implement what you've learned successfully, and um, can you sort through the various answers that you might find and figure out the best one. Number 13. Okay. I really dislike 13 and I struggle with it. I spent 10 years as a contract worker representing brands and event marketing. Ooh. Worked on a secret tech project as a tech writer, ESL teaching, have a passion for fine arts, but now I'm transitioning to dev. Not sure how to describe my story in a way that acknowledges my past experiences, um, but doesn't discredit my future career goals. So I don't feel like you're going to discredit your future career goals by talking about your past accomplishments. Um, uh, you could say that you've had a wide variety of experiences in the past, such as and such as representing large scale brands for large scale events. Working with competing priorities of these brands to define exactly what they wanted and refine their marketing to perfectly meet their needs. Um, you might skip over the secret. I don't know how much you can talk about that tech writer project, especially if it was like a secret project. I don't know how much you could talk about that. You could say, and I was a, I I was a tech writer for a while. Unfortunately, I can't discuss that due to NDAs or whatever. But you can still emphasize that you have the skills of a tech writer, which can be great for things like documentation. Um, and then you could say, so I let's see, spent 10 years as a contract worker. Um, I tailored my marketing to perfectly meet the needs of large scale brands for large scale events. I've taught people English, working as a teacher day in, day out to refine their skills in their second language, working with a multitude of different people in a multitude of different environments. Um, and along with coding, I'm also passionate about art and fine arts and design and learning how design meshes itself and it can be expressed in code and development work. I think they are not mutually exclusive, and that's what's wonderful about this field and what makes me so passionate about it. Is that there's so much to intertwine these two things together, and it's only becoming more intertwined. Um, and so when you say stuff like that, you're not discrediting your past experiences. You're using them to color what you want out of your future, right? You're speaking with passion and you're speaking with positivity and you're speaking with excitement about how becoming a developer can build on those past skills and blend with them. I hope that helps a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Rascal 2. That's a great thing to bring up. So, rewinding a little bit, we were talking about solving challenges with code and applying different solutions that you might have found online. And Rascal brought up A B tests. And so, if you don't know what A B tests are, that's essentially when you give one option to one group of users and another option to another group of users simultaneously and have them try it out and see what feedback you get. So, it's an A or B, and then you decide which one you go with depending on the feedback that you get. And so you could bring that up too. You kind of slide that in when you're answering that question about the creative and unusual approach. You could say, well, I implemented I implemented one option that I found, and then I implemented another option, and I explored both options in kind of an A/B format, and had some folks test it out, and then using based on that feedback that I got, I chose this option. And so that also gives you another opportunity to just kind of hype yourself up a little bit with some of the stuff that you've built in your GitHub and kind of guide them to your GitHub. It is so hard to get adults together for D&D. I keep hearing that. Yeah. I've been afraid to apply since I'm only in the JS portion of 100 devs. So, what you want to do, designer, is not apply, but you want to start networking. You want to start reaching out. You want to start scheduling coffee chats with people on Twitter and LinkedIn. Just making connections in the You don't have to start applying for jobs now. And really, the point is to not apply. The point is to network your way in. So create those connect. You can start building those connections now. They'll take a little while to mature, and then eventually you're going to have an in. And you can say like I'm building my skills at the moment, but I will be ready in, I don't know, 3 months, and I will be ready for that position at your company. Job requirements. Job requirements: having developed at least two JavaScript frameworks. Yeah, no, 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 no. Yeah, sadly, it was a great resume project, really big, but can't disclose it. That's okay. If you can't say it, but if you can't say it, then say that. Be like, unfortunately, due to the NDA or due to government whatever, you can't talk about the project, but you can still talk about the skills you gained on the project. So you can say, that really helped develop my skills as a technical writer, specifically in the area of, I don't know, if you can say as much, you can talk about kind of the general area in which you develop those skills. So you can be hopefully maybe still emphasize that you gained skills in that position. It wasn't like a black hole where you just disappeared for however long. You still gain skills, right? Questions like, why do you want to work for us, are such BS. Yes, but you still should be able to answer them. The first question that I got asked when I did my applied for the senior dev role. So I did apply, but I networked with the manager beforehand. And so eventually I had to click that apply button, but it was after I'd talked to the manager. But still, regardless, one of the questions that I got asked was, why are you interested in this job? because up to that point, I had never been a developer before. So they're going to want to know, okay, like why? Like, why do you why are you making this change? Why do you want to be here? I previously, all I'd done was operations management and data analytics. Had never had a coding role, like a specific coding role before. And so, and I'll admit, I kind of fumbled that question a little bit because I hadn't practiced it beforehand because it was such a generic question. It was not one that I'd practiced, and I didn't have a good answer for it. Luckily, they rolled with it, and I was able to get up to steam on the rest of the questions. But um, for the why you want to work for us question, what hopefully you've done your homework beforehand with whoever you're talking to in that interview. Hopefully you have researched that question beforehand. And what I like to say often is go on their website, um, make sure that you understand what they do and why they do it. Look for anything in the news that they might have, put out in the new, any announcements, press releases, things they put out recently, big initiatives that they're doing, um, big expansions, things like that. You can kind of say, you can say like, wow, I've, I've really grown my developer skills. I'm passionate about this field. But what really drew me to you is that I want to get more experience in the, and then you can talk about what niche they're in here. I want to get more experience in the, um, uh, advertising space. And I see that you've recently launched I was really excited to see that you've recently launched a major campaign in South America, marketing, I don't know, I don't know, whatever their major initiative is, and that'll show that you're paying attention to what the company does. And yeah, it is BS. Who cares if it gets you the job? Who cares? Yeah, it'll show. But what it'll show is that you've at least cared. You've cared enough to understand what the company does, and you're not just rolling in there because you are just shotgunning every company that you see and get trying to get as many interviews as you can. Now you might be doing that, but at least you can come prepared. You're always going to have it's a game, right? It's a game. And so the more prepared you can be, the better off you will be. And everybody involved knows that there's going to be some level of, BSery involved, right? However, if you can play the game effectively, then you get the job. So who cares? Making a big effort to network currently. Awesome. That's great. Regarding networking, Leon was reaching out to recruiters. Why? I thought we wanted to network with other devs at these companies. Yeah, if you can if you can network with a dev and get an inroad in that way, that's awesome. But sometimes devs aren't gonna necessarily have a lot of sway in the hiring process. So recruiters, that I mean, that is their job. They're meant to try to get keep butts in seats at those companies. They have a financial incentive. They get paid, for filling those roles. And so I feel like the more you shouldn't draw the line at not networking with a certain group just because they're not a dev, right? And so the wider net you can cast, the more likely you're able to get some kind of an inroads. Why do you want to work for us? I like money. Yeah, and that's the real answer, right? The real answer, the why do you want to work for us question, is because you like money and you need money to live. But because it's a game, you got to play by the rules, right? Being encouraged to click apply by a manager is different than just click. Yeah, because there's a process that you have to follow, like for HR reasons, right? They need an application, they need your resume and all that. Yeah, they gotta the wheels have got to go, right? But if you can get a manager to say like, yes, I am going to, as soon as you click apply, I'm going to reach into that HR pool and grab your resume out of there. Because if I had just gone and clicked apply, my resume would not have made it past that automated level 1 HR screening because I did not meet the job requirements. So my resume would have just gone unread and gotten tossed on the reject stack. But the manager said, I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab that resume out of the stack myself to make sure that you make it in line. Yeah, and exactly. If the why you want to work for us question, you got to stroke their ego. You got to understand what the company does and why they do it, and you got to be able to speak to that. I can I can ask job. Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes you will genuinely be excited about the mission and the vision. Exactly. Sometimes you will, sometimes you don't. However, since we're supposed to be doing 60 of these, I mean, I doubt that you're going to be passionate about all of them. But if you can find some that you are, then great. You can speak to that honestly. But even for the ones that you aren't passionate about, you still have to speak to their mission with the same passion, even if it's something you really don't care about. So it's okay to apply after talking with a recruiter or wait until you have another connect at the company. Um, I mean, if the recruiter tells you to go ahead and, if the recruiter says, wow, you seem like you might be a great fit and apply, I mean, you might as well. Um, but yeah, you should have at least some connection to the company before you apply. Somebody who's going to reach into that stack and grab your resume. We've all faked passion. We've all faked passion for half an hour at some point. Yeah. All right, let's look at a few more of these questions. So somebody mentioned a few others. I'm going to scroll back up here. Okay, we already talked about number 5. I'm sorry, somebody mentioned a few others recently. Trying to go back and find them. I think it was 4, 8, and 11. Yeah, 4, 8, and 11. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, let's look at those. Tell me about when you had to deal with conflict within your team. How was the conflict solved? How did you handle it? How would you deal with it now? Okay, so let's think about why this question is being asked. Why do we think this question is being asked? What do we think? What's the reason this is on the list? Why somebody might ask this? What's the rationale? They need to know you're going to be a good fit. Yeah, in general, but specifically, why are they asking this? Why are they asking this? They seem like traps. No, they're not traps. Yeah, exactly. They want to know your conflict management style, making sure you're professional, sure. Um, Conflict management is super important in a team situation and says a lot about you as a person. Yeah, because conflict is inevitable. Exactly. Conflict is going to happen. It's unavoidable on any team. People are going to disagree, and they want to know, how do you handle those types of disagreements? They don't want to hire someone. I like the way you put that turn down. They don't want to hire somebody that's going to be the problem. They don't want to hire somebody that's going to be the you know the sore thumb on the team that's going to stick out and cause trouble, stir things up. So they're not they're not they don't really they're not trying to get you to say that you're better than all your coworkers. What they want to hear is, how do you deal with conflict? When you had a past conflict, how did you solve it? How did you work through it? The second part of this question is really important as well. How did you handle that? How would you deal with it now? So, what do you think they're looking for here? How did you handle that? How would you deal with it now? What do you think they're looking for here? One word. Growth. That's it. They're looking for growth as well. Yes, they are looking for growth. Yeah. So, two things. They're looking for, what's your conflict management style? And maybe things didn't go super well. That's fine. You're allowed to talk about that. Things don't go well, you're allowed to talk about that. But what they also want to see in the second part of this is some growth. Have you grown emotionally? Can you mature? Can you learn from mistakes? So that can be a great opportunity. If you have a past conflict that maybe ended a little rough, maybe you had some team conflicts where um, you know maybe they were unresolvable, maybe somebody left the team because of these conflicts. All right, well, how would you deal with that now? And what you want to show in the second part of that answer, oops, sorry, what you want to show in the second part of that answer is, can you grow and mature in your approach to conflict? It's very situational, yes, but what I'm trying to give you here is a sort of a general framework, a way that you can answer it, and some key points that you should hit. So what you want to show is, hopefully, what you want to show is maturity in your approach to conflict. Did you approach the? Did you um, uh, can you describe the conflict without blaming others? Can you describe it in an objective way? And then how did you handle it? Did you show good conflict management skills, such as trying to talk it out with the other party, working with management if possible, um, and then finding at least one way that you maybe could have dealt with it better? And how would you deal with it now? Well, I would have also done this. Maybe your conflict was, maybe you had an interpersonal conflict on your team where someone on your team maybe wasn't doing their work, wasn't doing their fair share, so you talked it out with them. You attempted to approach them and talk it out with them. um, but maybe eventually they just kind of got a bad performance review and left. Okay, well, the conflict was resolved technically, but how you might deal with it now is approaching your manager and describing the situation, and maybe describing some ways that the team could assist this person with getting up to speed and their work. So that could be an opportunity for growth there. Perhaps smacking my coworker in the face was not the optimal response in the moment. Yeah, maybe don't describe physical violence. Yeah, absolutely. For this one, I say there was a miscommunication, and moving forward, a new system was implemented to avoid the same miscommunication again. So, if possible, maybe you could refine that answer a little bit to talk about how maybe you were a part of getting that. So, instead of using the passive voice and saying a system was implemented, how did you help get that system implemented? What did you do to, even if you were a small part, how did you fit into that solution? How were you a part of that solution rather than it just happening? Kristen says, I find it so hard to remember specific situations I've experienced that I can apply. Yeah, that's why you practice. Got to practice these questions so that you have those specific situations just in your head and you can pull them out like a Rolodex. Um, you think I like to think of it kind of like you just kind of have the main bullet points of those types of situations in your head, and you can mix and match them to meet your needs to answer the question. Yeah, absolutely. And communication should always be a major part of your answer. Yep, 100%. Communication is so important. It's a buzzword, but it's what they want to hear. Admitting fault, yeah, and that's why that's the whole reason why this second part of this question exists. Showing that you are able to admit to mistakes and show growth, show change. That's why the failure question is even on here. Is tell about a time when you failed, admitting fault, and then showing growth. Um, this is one of my favorite questions. I love this question. I've answered it before because it's a great opportunity to show when you made a mistake, how you addressed that mistake in the moment, and then how you've grown since then using that mistake as a lesson. Yeah, I love this. I love this question so much. Yeah, it's kind of rough for people who aren't neurotypical, this type of interview, which is why it's so important to even make things up, practice those stories, and believe. Yeah, if you don't have an answer, then make something up and practice it until you can deliver it confidently. And for those of you who are not neurotypical, sorry, um, you got to rehearse this stuff. It's like a play. You're gonna have to rehearse it and get it down pat. Hey, welcome, ghosts. Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. Turned down. Yeah. Low poly, how do you sincerely handle conflict in your professional spaces? Did your conflict resolution tactics evolve over the years? I'm not sure if you're asking me, but I'm happy to answer. So in my case, in professional spaces, we've all encountered conflict at times. You have team members who disagree. Maybe they're at odds with ways to solve a problem. And in the past, my approach would have been more to sort of quietly go along with the party that I agreed with, um, and not really speak up too much in the moment while the conflict was occurring, and more of just quietly sort of put throw my weight on the side that I agreed with. However, my resolution tactics have evolved over the years, to the point where I now speak up with constructive feedback in the moment to try to find some common ground, maybe restating what both sides are saying to make sure that both, because a lot of the times conflict in a workplace setting arises because both sides don't generally don't understand or aren't listening to what the other side is saying. So if a third party can politely restate what both sides are saying and make sure that everyone's voice is being captured. Sometimes they just want to be heard. And so if you can capture that voice and say, yes, I do understand what you're saying, and here's what I think I'm hearing from you, um, you can better approach a compromise that way. It won't always work. Sometimes you fail. But at least everybody in the room is going to understand both sides' position and can hopefully come to some kind of a compromise or make a better informed decision that way. So that's how I would answer that question. I used to be in non-interview words. I used to be a doormat. I would let people walk all over me. I would go along with whatever people said because I thought that would make them like me. Whereas that's not true. People like someone who's going to share their opinions and thoughts in a polite way, in a constructive way, and really contribute to the discussion and contribute positively to finding a solution. Yeah. I used to be the quiet, demure one in the corner because, when you're a kid, that's what you get praised for is being the quiet one, being seen but not heard, that kind of thing. People say, oh, they're so polite. Um, but really, that's not necessarily setting you up for a particularly good future in the workplace. But you learn that lesson the hard way and then you grow from it. Oh, that's a great answer. Turned down. I tried to handle conflict myself and it escalated beyond my control. Yeah, so that's how you handle it in the moment. I respectively brought it up with my direct manager. Yeah, yeah. And so all right, so that's what you did in the moment. And then for the answer of how you might handle it now, you might say, well, I learned from that experience. And so how I might handle it now would just be discussing it, getting my manager's feedback sooner, approaching them sooner, and making sure that I had their advice and that they were fully apprised of the situation sooner. What if the solution to a conflict was to boot a member from the group? Sometimes that is a solution. Maybe they just don't fit. And you could say that unfortunately we discussed it together as a group, and unfortunately we it was determined that this person would just not be a good fit in the group any longer, and so we mutually agreed that this person would depart the group. Um, and so your answer to how you might handle it now could vary depending on the circumstances of that situation. But you could say, we would maybe try outside mediation or, approaching a member of management to help us arbitrate this, that kind of thing. You could have several answers to how you would approach that now. Oh, coding brings up a great welcome to the stream, coding newbie. They bring up a great point. Writing my resume and looking back now, I should have noted all the things I learned along the way as opposed to recalling it after a few years. Yeah, I feel like that's a mistake a lot of us make. Um, I definitely made that in my first couple roles. I didn't write anything down because I figured I'll remember what I was doing. This was a big project, it was super important. I'll remember it. Yeah, no, you won't. No, you won't. You got to keep track of this stuff. And so, in my role before this one, I actually started taking daily notes. Now I don't do that daily anymore, but I would literally have a checklist, like paper checklist. I would write it down and talk, and I would write down each of the things I was going to do that day, and I would check them off as I got them done. And so I had a stack of paper like this thick of all of my tasks from 3 years worth of work in that particular role. And so I was able to just kind of skim through that and be like, oh, yeah, I remember that project. And I was able to put it on my resume. Nowadays, what I do instead is I kind of keep track digitally. So it's easier to search through it. I've heard folks say that they use Excel spreadsheets or Google Docs to do that, which is great options. I kind of just keep like a running version of my resume. So I'm constant, like once every month, I'm like revising it, updating it, thinking about my new accomplishments, taking older stuff off. Um, yeah, I just kind of keep my resume constantly up to date. Uh, Perez says, "Is this list from an actual bank?" Yeah, this is the bank from 100 Devs. These are really common interview questions. Are you talking about like a bank, like a money bank? No, this isn't from like a money bank. It's just when we say bank, we just mean like a long list of questions that are very common to job interviews. So it's not for a specific like money bank, but it's a long list of common questions. Forgot to mention I work well alone and with others. I'm basically an injection mold you can pour into your org and become exactly what you want. Yeah, and that's another important point is that they are looking for someone that they can mold and shape into exactly the employee that they want. And so showing that you are adaptable can be another great thing to emphasize. You adapt to situations. Yeah. Um, in a workplace, conflict management often comes down to understanding the power structure and picking your battles. Yeah, that's definitely a component of it. But also, again, the even the smaller things. Can you communicate? Can you attempt to communicate? Um, can you show empathy and consideration for others, even if you disagree with them? Those are other important things. Oh, you enjoy JavaScript more? Okay, interesting. Bossman says they used to do Python, but now their JavaScript skills are better. That's rad. My top three companies have Python positions, but low percent. I wouldn't prepare ahead of time. I would just see get what jobs you get doors open for, and then see what learn what's going to be on the interview and prepare for it the weekend before. Um, yeah, no worries about the paragraph. That's fine. Yeah, I wouldn't try to do all this months of preparation just to in one particular field. Leon has said that that's a mistake that a lot of people make is they try to diversify themselves too much. They try to know everything beforehand when really what you can do is just see what jobs you get opportunities for. If they see what jobs you get offered interviews for, and ask the interviewer what questions are you gonna ask me. I mean, legit, straight up ask them, um, and just be like, hey, so what kind of questions are going to be in this interview? And they will tell you. And then you're like, okay, cool. And then you spend the weekend before prepping your butt off for whatever, technical questions they're going to ask you, if any. Recorded every win and learning moment. Absolutely. All right. I'm a mirror made of clay. How can you express that you are empathetic? What would be a successful way of getting that soft skill across? So, if you can talk about a moment when you noticed that maybe someone was struggling, maybe with their job responsibilities. Maybe you noticed that a coworker was having difficulty getting things done. And so, the knee jerk reaction might be to be angry with them because they're not pulling their weight. And so I think that's actually a question in here. So let's look. Tell me about a time when you worked with someone who was not completing his or her share of the work. That's a question. So that can be a moment when you could demonstrate empathy by understanding, maybe you could show your empathy by saying how you approach that coworker, maybe not in a negative way, but ask me, hey, I noticed that things have maybe been a little tougher for you lately. Is there anything you want to talk about, or anything you need help with, anything I can assist you with in this moment? Um, and that shows that you're not approaching that person with no consideration for what might be going on in their lives. Showing that you can empathize with their situation, struggles they might be having. um, so how did you handle the situation? Well, you approach them with kindness, you approach them with genuine interest in what might be going on with them. Did you discuss your concern with your coworker? Which case you want to say, yes, I did. I talked with my coworker. They said some things they've been struggling with lately. And then maybe you could, together we approached our manager and we figured out a new division of responsibilities that helped them, deal with the things that were going on in their personal life, but still help them, contribute positively to the team. Little anchovy, isn't these questions too much detail and prefer to be answered in written, not verbally? No. So I was asked most of these questions verbally in a virtual interview on the job. They want you to be able to. You're not going to be given like a piece of paper. It's not like in school. You're not going to be given a piece of paper and asked to write these things out. At least not in the U.S. I don't know where you're from. Maybe it's different elsewhere. But for jobs in the U.S., generally you're going to be sitting across from someone or sitting across from a screen, and they're going to be asked. Sometimes a group of people on a Zoom call, and you're going to be asked to answer these on the spot verbally. So you got to be able to articulate it. I would be so bothered to answer all of these verbally. That's why we practice. It's just like with anything. You're going to suck at it at first. You're going to be terrible at answering these questions. It's going to feel weird and uncomfortable, and you're not going to know what to say. But you got to practice and practice with others if you can. Have others critique positively critique your answers and see if you can improve them. Designer says, wait, we can literally ask about the questions? Yes. Leon emphasizes doing that specifically. Leon says, hey, if you can, ask your contact, ask the recruiter, whoever, and say, like, yeah, so can you tell me a little bit about the kind of questions that are going to be asked in this interview and how I can be the most prepared for this interview? They'll most likely tell you, or at least give you a sense of the topics that are going to be discussed. So little anchovy, that's part of the practice. So they say just imagine how many minutes you need to talk to explain every question. It's not that you give your life story for every single question. What's important is that you practice these so that you can refine your answers down to a couple of sentences that concisely meet the requirements of each question. That's why we practice. At first, your answers are probably going to be too long. Um, but you can refine it down with the more practice. And if you understand the reason why the questions are being asked, what's the intent? Why is this what behavioral trait is this specific question trying to come across? What are they fishing for here? Then you can refine your answer to meet that need. Tell me about yourself. What exactly should we focus on? Yeah, so focusing on with the tell me about yourself. Um, you're going to want to kind of give like a highlight list of your major accomplishments, interesting things that you've done, major projects that you've completed. For those of you in 100 devs, you're going to have a pretty extensive GitHub. So you can emphasize your GitHub and be like, yeah. And so, I started out in, so for me, I would say, so I've had a fairly varied background. I started out in data analytics, and then I moved to operations management. I managed a small team. I managed logistics for a major e-commerce company, um, and then after that, I moved into. I wanted to exercise my passion for analytics, and so I moved into a more pure analytics field at my alma mater, working for a positive outcome for the finances for the university to help reach more students. Um, but then I discovered, development, a passion for development in my free time. I explored that outside of work, and I really broadened my skills in that field. And if I have a very extensive GitHub with a lot of independent projects in fields and other fields that I'm passionate about, hobbies such as fostering kittens. I built an app to help with that. I built an app um, I've done some freelance clients. I've done some freelance work with paid clients. Um, and yeah, really grown my skills extensively over the past year or so. And then, depending on the vibe of the interview, you could also talk about some of your hobbies. If you have interesting hobbies, things that you enjoy that might be a little bit unusual, you can create a connection with your interviewer that way, especially if it's a hobby that they also share. So if you can research your interviewer ahead of time on LinkedIn, learn a little bit about them. Um, and if you share any hobbies, be sure to mention that. I tend to be a little long-winded. Got to practice. Yeah, with practice, you'll refine it down. MME says, yeah. For question 13, can I say fun facts about myself? Yeah, if you're passionate about your art, you can use that as kind of a counterpoint to, I'm a developer, but I also do art. Both sides of the coin, that kind of thing. Like showing that you're a really a well-rounded individual. Um, you might you might not maybe talk about your pets um, unless you find that one of your interviewers is also really passionate about cats or something like that. Um, but I would definitely talk about your art because that shows that you're a dev, you can do art, you're creative and you're analytical. For me, thinking for possible answers for the hiring process is pure anxiety and chaos. It is for a lot of people. Yeah. And that's why we practice. I've said it before, I'll say it again. A lot of people feel anxious when they look at these questions. There's a lot of questions here. A lot of people don't feel comfortable talking to other people, but you don't want your first time answering these questions in front of a group to be when you step into an interview room. That's just going to make it worse. What you need to do is get up in front of somebody and workshop these questions with them, even if maybe if it's just in front of the mirror at first. Get on the Discord, answer them with a friend, answer them with a sibling, answer them with a parent, a relative, whoever, somebody. Practice with them in a non-judgmental space, in a space where there is no stakes, and just practice. Like with anything, if I were to get up in front of if somebody put a guitar in my hands and pushed me out on stage to do a recital, yeah, it would be horrible. I wouldn't know what to do. But if I practice the guitar for months beforehand, then I'm going to feel a lot better when I walk out on that stage. And so, it's just like it's no different than any other thing that that you do that you learn. It just takes practice. Yeah, absolutely. We should take a break. We normally like to take a break about once an hour. We were on a great roll there. Really loving the conversation as always. I love these streams. When we just spend our time talking about approaches to these types of questions, learning about people's backgrounds, that kind of thing. I know we didn't talk about all three of the questions that somebody brought up before. We only got to one, and then I got distracted. I'm gonna find those questions again. I do want to answer all of them. Sorry. 4, 8, and 11. Okay. So we talked about conflict. We talked about that one. Oh, 8 is a good one. Yeah. And 11. Yeah. So we did talk about 11 a little bit. Um, but yeah, we can definitely talk about number 8 as well when we come back from the break. Also, too, at any point, if you have questions for me about being a developer or anything like that, I'm always happy to answer questions about my personal experience. Although I do want to keep it, you know, kind of focused on you guys for the most part. I'm still happy to talk about my own experiences, but I don't want this to become the Mind Wolf show. I do want to help you all because this is your moment. This is you're looking for jobs, not me. But I'm not a closed book. I'm also happy to talk about my experiences as well. Um, let's see. If anyone's wondering if this is ethical, yes, it is. F them. Yeah, it's a game, right? It's a game, and just like with any game, the rules are made up. In any game, the rules don't matter in real life, but it's a game, and so the rules matter in the context of the game. And so once you learn the rules and you practice the rules, you practice your skills, then you can play the game. And so there you go. It's a microcosm in itself. Just remember the reason why these questions are being asked. Being asked to show that you are a good fit, that you can be molded, that you can learn, that you can adapt. Um, and that's what they want to see. They want to see that you're someone they can pluck off the street and mold into the perfect employee in their company. Yep. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will talk about question number 8. I'm going to highlight it so I don't forget because I'm very liable to. I just got some new foster kittens, and so I'm very tired. And I'm also on call, so I got called last night as well at about 2 a.m. So I'm running on fumes. It's okay though. All right, let's highlight this. Streaming always does give me some energy because I'm up, I'm moving, so it helps. Kitten cam. Yeah, I know. I've got 3 kitten cams in the queue. So one of my channel points rewards is that I show my foster kittens on screen. I do absolutely want to show them. Um, I think we'll probably do that on Sunday's stream. So this Sunday, I think we'll do a foster kitten cam. I like whenever I get new ones, I just got them yesterday. I like to give them a few days to just kind of observe and make sure that none of them have any issues that I didn't know about, medical issues, that kind of thing. And so I just kind of like to leave them be for a few days, and then but I think by Sunday we should be in a good spot. So got a DQ. I know. I know. I've got a backlog of kitten cam requests, and so I definitely I was so happy when they contacted me and said they had some kittens for me, because I was like, dang it, I got 3 in the queue. Yeah, yeah. So Sunday we will do kitten cam once the little kiddos are fully settled in. They're very cute. They're little. They're little potatoes. They're great. All right, 5 minutes on the clock. Go get a drink. Go stretch. Get up. Move your wrists around. Move your neck around. Get something to drink. And I will see you all back here in 5. Oh, thanks, Andrea. All right, folks, come on back if you're coming back. Get yourself a drink. Do one more stretch. Day 4305, still no cat with a mustache. Yeah, I'll need to look a little closer and see if any of these kiddos have a mustache. I'm not sure. Hey, I forgot to check. I'm sorry, Mavi. All right. I'm going to go ahead and pause the timer here before it beeps at us. Okay, so uh, Kayla says, oh, let me turn my camera back on. Sorry. Okay. Kayla says, I got feedback on a technical assessment and they want to do a final interview. Congratulations. Yeah, that's great. Um, should I fix the code they noted prior to the final interview and present it to them then? Or should I send the corrections back to them ASAP? Should I even send my corrected code? I want this job so bad. You could always ask. You could say, thank you so much for your feedback on this code. Um, uh, would you like me to send you my solutions prior to the interview? I would say if you're in doubt about it, just ask them what they would like to see from you and what they would like to see from you in the final interview. Um, it shows that you're passionate about the. Yeah, I always forget asking is an option. Yeah, well, we often think. I mean, me included. We often think that we're just supposed to know this stuff, and that if we show that we don't know, then we're not prepared or whatever. No, being prepared is asking and making sure that you have everything ready, making sure that you have what they want ready for them. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at question 8. That was the one I wanted to cover. Um, Describe a situation in which you experienced difficulty in getting others to accept your ideas. What was your approach? How did this work? Were you able to successfully persuade someone to see things your way? Um, so I'm sure we've all had this happen to us at some point, right? You're in a group and you make a suggestion, something that you think would be the right answer to that question. Um, and other folks weren't buying it for whatever reason. Other folks weren't buying it, right? You say what you think is the perfect answer, and then everybody's like, nah. Or people keep bringing up other things that you could do instead, and you're just like, no, but I'm right, like me, mine. And so in your approach, again, you're going to want to emphasize um, an approach that is considerate to others, showing empathy for others. So what you might say is, I spoke with the others in the group to better understand why they were passionate about their solutions. So what were their solutions and why were they so passionate about them and not really willing to consider my suggestion instead? And so I tried to better understand their suggestions, make sure that they were heard, and then you could say that I incorporated the philosophy behind their suggestions and showed how it aligned with mine, just in a different way. So I said, well, you could say something like, uh, I was able to, draw the parallels between their suggestions and mine in just a different implementation. And so then I was able to, so once I drew those parallels, I was then able to highlight the differences in my suggestion and why those specific differences were the better option in the end. So again, they're looking to hear about empathy. They're looking to hear about empathy. They're looking to hear about communication, about consideration for others. And then how did this work? It might not work. It's okay. You're allowed to talk about times when it doesn't work. You're allowed to talk about times when maybe it wasn't successful. Um, but you could still talk about your approach and emphasize your methods, and then say, well, yeah, they didn't end up accepting my suggestion, but maybe they incorporated parts of your suggestion. Maybe they pulled out specific components, and those ended up in the final project. So, I mean, that's still a win. And so you can emphasize even a partial success. You can emphasize as well. Um, and if maybe you made mistakes in your approach, that can be another point when you could highlight how how you might handle things differently now. Maybe your approach wasn't the best at the time, but now you know how to handle it better. So if you have some specific, does anybody have a specific scenario that they'd like to mention where you had a situation when you experienced difficulty in getting others to accept your ideas. We could maybe workshop that a little bit and see how we can mold it to answer this question specifically. I thought it wanted to know how you would bend others to your will. No, 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 no. It wants, again, it's another question about how do you handle conflict? Can you approach it in a constructive way? Can you consider others' opinions? Can you handle a hybrid solution, or maybe maybe a time? Can you maturely handle times when you don't get your way without creating unnecessary conflict? So, does that help with this question at all? Does anybody have a specific scenario they'd like to mold to see if we can answer this question with that scenario? Another way you could approach this as well is when you describe a situation in which you experience difficulty in getting others to accept your ideas. You could talk about, considering other suggestions and drawing the parallels between their suggestion and your own, while emphasizing the advantages of your suggestion. You could also, another great thing to also emphasize is uh, taking initiative with your suggestion, and maybe, oh, I built a, people didn't understand my suggestion at first, so I built a mock-up, and I presented it to the group to give them a visual example and maybe a working example of my suggestion in action. So even if we didn't end up using it in the end, I was still able to show them a working mock-up of how this suggestion would be potentially be implemented. Yep, exactly. You have to pick your battles. And again, that's what they want to see. They want to see that you can pick your battles, that you're not going, if you don't win, that you're not going to be a sore loser. Yeah. I am Sassy says, I used to have to work most holidays at work because I was low seniority. I suggested rotating if nobody volunteered. Everyone was good with that. Yeah. So you say everyone was good with that. Um, so was there any resistance to that idea at first? Any resistance at all, or was it immediate acceptance? Oh, Polly Princess says during the panda, I convinced the team to close down when there was a COVID outbreak. Okay, so was there resistance to that at first, Polly? What was the what resistance did you encounter? Was there resistance from the business owner about closing down and losing business? So what first we got it. So it's wonderful that in both of these situations, it's wonderful that you all were successful. But where's the story? I guess I need a little bit more. Give me more. Where's the story? Where's the arc? Where's the resistance at first, the conflict, and then the resolution? The compromise was that I'd always have to work December 24th because I'm low seniority. So, okay. So if there was no real conflict, you can kind of emphasize the implied conflict a little bit. So you could say, describe a situation in which you experienced difficulty getting others to accept your ideas. Okay, at a previous workplace, I was fairly low seniority at the time. I was fresh out of college, new career, and so by the unspoken rules of that workplace, being the new person, the low person on the totem pole, I was asked to work. I was expected to work all holidays. Um, Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving. I was just expected to work all holidays. I didn't feel that was the best approach, so I I brought it up in one of our weekly group meetings in front of the entire group. I suggested that if nobody volunteered for a particular holiday, that we should instead do a fair rotation between all members on the team. Now, I wasn't sure that this would fly because it did mean that some people may have to work holidays that they didn't expect. Right? Somebody doesn't expect to work Thanksgiving, and suddenly they're up in the rotation. So I tried to give some examples of how we could trade off with each other, and how we could communicate with each other and treat each other. Treat each other's time as valuable, and trade off and keep things equitable for everyone. And with this approach, with treating everybody as equals, and valuing everyone's time, I was able to successfully persuade the group to see things my way, which resulted in a better schedule for me, And I felt like more respect from my coworkers as well. So that's how you could kind of frame it. I mean, there wasn't a direct resistance to your idea, but there is kind of an implied downside, right, for everybody else. If you're not taking all the holidays, then there's an implied downside. So you could kind of emphasize that. Patacha says, "Can I use a patient not wanting to accept our suggested treatment for this question, or does it have to be with coworkers?" No, that's a great option. That's amazing. So notice it doesn't say coworkers anywhere. It does not say the word coworkers anywhere in this question. So yeah, 100%. It just says others. So working with people outside of your group or working with the public is often so much more difficult than working with coworkers, because in the workplace, at least with coworkers, there's sort of implied rules of interaction, right? You have to see these people every single day, so most of the time you're going to want to keep things civil, and there's going to be certain rules of engagement. Even if things get a little heated, if personalities clash, um, again, you're going to see these people every day, so you kind of keep things civil. But with the public, there are no rules. It is a no holds barred death match, right? So you never know what you're going to get when you're working with the public. And so if you can share stories about convincing patients about, you know, making showing real change with customers and that kind of thing, that can be a really impressive, because the public is wild. Similar situation, I put together a report to show the benefits of the company could grow from the decision in the long term instead of just planning within the immediate space. Still didn't win them over due to them wanting to keep down initial spend, even though it was going to be more costly and cumbersome even now. But I learned a lot in the process about how to communicate ideas. Yeah, it's a fantastic. That's a really fantastic example, Ghosts. Yeah, it shows that you're able to take initiative, that you were so passionate about this idea that you built a mock-up, you built your own version of it, you learned how to communicate better. And so if you can emphasize some of the specifics about what you learned in your answer, some of the specific traits that you gained from building that pitch, then that can be a great thing to share. Yeah. All right, what else? Doesn't have to be with question 8. We can go on to another question. What other questions do we have here? What other again, going back to histories, does anybody else have a work history they're not sure how to sell? Anybody having difficulty selling their background, um, uh, making their background conform to these types of questions? Anybody having trouble picking out their accomplishments or knowing what they're good at based on their background? Number 11. Yeah, okay. So we touched on this a little bit earlier, but we can definitely take another look here. Um, Tell me about a time when you worked with someone who was not completing his or her share of the work. How did you handle the situation? Did you discuss your concern with your coworker, with your manager? If yes, how did your coworker respond to your concern? What was your manager's response? Yeah. So again, why is this question being asked? Well, it's being asked to kind of gauge your approach to conflict. Again, most of these are. It's how do you approach conflict? How do you approach interpersonal relationships? Also, are you able to communicate on a one-to-one basis with your coworkers about topics that may be uncomfortable? So somebody else not doing their job is probably kind of uncomfortable. But are you able to talk with them about it? So a great answer for this question would be if you encounter this situation and you were able to first have a conversation with your coworker about it, and then but that won't always work, right? Maybe that goes nowhere, and so then you want to emphasize, I approached my coworker, they discussed some personal issues they were having, and I suggested that they, tell our manager about it so that maybe we could um, refine their duties a little bit more to make it fit better with their current schedule. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. Didn't feel comfortable sharing that with our manager. Um, and their work continued to slip. We continued to fall behind on projects. It just really didn't seem to improve. And so eventually I went to our manager and I suggested that they have a private conversation with that coworker without sharing that coworker's business. I should just suggest that they approach that coworker and see if the coworker was willing to share directly with them. So that shows a mature approach to the situation without going to your manager and spilling the beans about your coworker. Just saying like, hey, I think you should maybe go talk with this person. I've spoken with them already. They've got some stuff going on. Maybe they should have a conversation with you. What they want to see is mature communication, a willingness to approach others even in uncomfortable situations, that you're able to handle these things in a mature manner without getting frustrated or annoyed, um, even if you don't understand where that other person is coming from in their life. So again, what is this question? What is the reason this question is being asked? It's being asked to show communication, the ability to approach uncomfortable situations, emotional maturity in your approach to these situations. So not showing annoyance or anger, not saying like so. For example, a bad answer to this question might be, "Tell me about a time when you worked with someone who was not completing his or her share of the work." Well, a bad answer would be, "Oh yeah, man, I had this coworker one time and they just sucked. Like." They were so lazy. I had to do all their work. They just never got anything done. And so I just went in there and I picked up all their tasks and I just did everything for them. They just sat around all the time and I just did nothing. And I did everything for them, and like my manager didn't even acknowledge me at all. Like they didn't even care that I was doing all this extra work. And, after like 6 months, I left that job, and because it was just not worth my time. So that's a bad answer. Don't do that. But that that's it might seem like a good answer at first, right? You're showing like, oh yeah, I can do all this work, I can do everybody's work, I can do my work and somebody else's work. But that's not what they want. What they want is to show again that you can communicate, approach situations maturely, understand other people, where other people are coming from, um, and see multiple sides to a situation and involve management when appropriate. I'm happy to give bad answers to questions too. And sometimes that's fun, but I don't want people to get it twisted and think that that would be my real answer. Uh, I've been in the catch-up crew for a while, and it's been hard to do all the group projects. I want to do them, but it's been slow. Wondering about some non-traditional ways to go over number 14. I know Leon is going over the standard answer, but would love more ideas on it. Yeah, so I mean, as long as you're collaborating with others on the Discord, um, if you want to do the group projects in the catch-up crew, if you're in the catch-up crew, there's always folks that are starting those projects at any point. There's always I lurk in the catch-up crew channel sometimes, and there's always folks looking to start those group projects and get a group together to do them. So you're definitely not too late. Um, so about your experience at 100 devs, you could talk about the collaborative aspects, just in general, being on the Discord, collaborating with others, building independent projects, exploring uh, practical hands-on app building. I mean, depending on where you are in the course, you're building independent projects. Um, you're potentially getting a freelance client. So emphasizing all those things, emphasizing independent learning, while also collaborating with others, hopefully helping others, so assisting others when they encounter difficulties, building applications, full stack applications, working with clients, all those things you can emphasize without having to talk specifically about the agency aspect of 100 devs if that's not something you're comfortable with. Ruth says, does college teach these things or is it self learned? I assume you're talking about how to answer these types of questions. So, in my case, no, college does not teach these things. And it's a really unfortunate gap. I feel like college should, but college doesn't teach a lot of things that you actually need in the real world. I've used very little. I do have a college degree, but I've used very little of it in real life. A lot of what I've learned has been on the job and through making mistakes. And so, yeah, it's mostly self learned, but that doesn't mean that it's hard to learn. It's just a knowledge gap, and if you practice enough, you can fill that gap. And Turn Down for Rip gives a great suggestion there. In general, never talk bad or never talk down about a former business. If you move on, they're going to assume that you're going to talk badly about them as well. If you get hired and then move on, they're going to assume that you're going to badmouth them as well. So don't talk badly about a former employer. If you've had a bad experience at a former employer, I certainly have. Um, Try to pick out the positive aspects of that experience, maybe the things that you learned from, improvements that you've made since then, skills that you've gained since then, and emphasize those. Emphasize growth, even if your previous employer sucked. And your previous employer might have given you some excellent answers to those like conflict questions, or the questions about trying to pitch something and nobody listening to you. So it can still give you good answers for these without bad mouthing your employer specifically. How does someone leverage their time working on political campaigns and in politics with tech, which is a neutral space? So I don't. So what did you do? What specifically did you do on those campaigns? You don't have to share your political affiliation. You can talk again. You can talk about the skills that you gained in that role without sharing political affiliations or causes. Um, you can keep it general, but still saying, I spent some time working for political campaigns, and in that time I learned how to juggle priorities. I learned how to network in a positive way with people. I learned how to communicate my ideas effectively, and I learned how to uh, have a positive uh, have positive disagreements with people, understand multiple sides to an issue, while still pushing my, well, while still not pushing, while still advancing my, what's the idea? Advancing my ideas and goals. How deep, Nikia Toll says, how deep do interviews usually go when you answer these questions? Usually not super deep. They might have follow up questions about like specific projects that you may have done, but in general, they've got a list, and they're going down the list. And they're going to take your answers and they might compare them to others. So, I mean, they have a time limit, especially if it's a group interview. You're going to have people with busy schedules and they've got to get through 4 interviews, in the next 2 hours. And so they got a list and they're going down it, and they're going to ask you all the questions. Yeah, like I said, piece of shoot. Yeah, you don't talk about what side you were on, or maybe the specific, don't emphasize the specific like organization or cause you were going for, but you can still talk about the general skills that you gain, the general, like, communication styles that you use, that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, it's just like with thanks. It's just like if you want to have a good Thanksgiving dinner with your parents or your relatives, avoid politics and avoid religion, and you should be fine. I often say I was able to learn a lot. It's generic, but shows you were engaged. Yeah, and you could even talk about some of the specific. I would suggest being a little bit more specific and talking about some of the specific skills that you gain. So, for example, from my employer, which wasn't my previous employer, a couple jobs ago, which wasn't the best, I could say, well, I really increased my time management skills. Um, I worked in a very fast paced environment with a lot of shifting priorities. And so it kept me on my toes, it kept me flexible, it kept me adaptable. It really helped me think of solutions on the fly, convincing others quickly and efficiently. And coming up with some really truly creative bootstrap solutions to problems in an environment that absolutely would not stop for you to give you time to think up a solution. You just had to roll with the punches. So that's how I would talk about that employer. Avoid politics, religion, and jQuery. Yeah. Fast paced environment is the nice term for understaffed. Correct. I was wearing about 16 hats in that role. None of them fit me properly. Middle Geek says, right, I was referring to a previous employer that you didn't have a good experience with. Yes, and so was I. That was a terrible employer. I was incredibly stressed and unhappy at that job. But did you hear how I talked about them? Yeah. So I was still able to talk about the positive things that I took from that experience. Nurgle says, should anything related to politics be left off of a resume unless you plan on working in civic tech? Um, it depends. How important was that role to your personal development? If it's a large part of your resume, then and has helped you gain a lot of valuable skills, then you might leave it on there. You could also tailor your resume depending on where you're applying. Um, you do a little research beforehand on the people who are going to be interviewing you, and if you see any red flags that might really conflict with that role, then you could just kind of take it off of there or make it more generic. You could be uh, you could put it on there, just instead of listing the party that you worked for, you could just say, like, Congress office or something like that. Um, I don't know exactly what your role was, um, but you could also sort of just make it generic. Good answer. You're hired. When can you start? That's the goal, right? All right. What other questions? Let's keep going. Good stuff. No worries. I leave. Led to charge to try to overthrow the government. Yeah, no, don't talk about that kind of thing. Remember, positivity. Talk about things that portray you in a positive light. You get to set the stage to portray yourself in the most positive light possible. You get to set all of the pieces on the board to set you to put you in an advantageous position when you start playing this game. So you actually get the chance to make the first move here. Yep, you're selling product and you are the product. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Who else isn't sure how to tailor their background for an interview? Or who else wants help with any of these behavioral questions? What questions are we not sure how to answer? I can zoom out a little bit so we can see them all. There we go. Kind of was cutting off the first few there. I'm going to get my tea. It's over there on that table. So while you think about it, I'm going to get my tea. Middle says, I've been in the IT field since 1996. Wow. I have a lot of stuff to put on my resume, enough to make it several pages long. So what I did is create different resumes for different positions that I'm going for. Yeah, that's a great idea. You don't have to have one single resume that you use for everything. You should tailor it when you can to fit the niche that you're going for. Emphasizing certain skills, taking certain skills off that aren't relevant. Yeah, I mean that's what I do. Um, like I say, I constantly update and tailor my resume as I do new things, and I take off things that don't really matter anymore. And yeah, it should be a living document. Absolutely. Madeline says, "Hey, Mayan, how would you handle a situation in a technical interview um, if you started to do a coding challenge and you truly didn't know how to do it?" Um, yeah, so that's probably going to happen at some point. But again, the point isn't that you can solve the problem. The point is that you can show that you have the skills to communicate, learn, grow, that you understand the methodology. And so what's important is going to what's going to be important is to communicate effectively while you're attempting the problem. So following the prep method is great. Um, Leon's been doing it a lot. So if you can articulate the inputs, if you can articulate the outputs, get some examples, talk through some pseudocode. So even if you can't solve the problem, if you can talk about it in pseudocode terms and say, like, yeah, this is kind of how I think this should go, um, then that's going to get you a long ways, even if you can't get the answer. So just do prep, and work it as much as you can, um, and say, like, you could even be honest and be like, I don't think I'm going to be able to get to the final answer here, but here's how I think it should be accomplished in general terms using these methods. Here's how I'd very much like to do it. And you could even do, what Leon suggested at one point was literally saying, sending an email later on with the solution once you get home. saying, I feel like we discussed the methodology that I would use to solve this problem. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, and that was so unfortunate. And so I went home and I continued the work and I solved the problem. And so here's how I was able to solve it using the methods that I already discussed in the interview. And so I sent, you essentially just finish the job with enough for loops. Anything is possible. Yeah. Andrea says, I would try to talk through prep as far as I could. Yeah, absolutely. You want to do prep. You want to be talking, communicating, showing that you understand what's being asked of you, even if you aren't able to solve it. Goku says, any method to stop panicking during the interview. Practice. Don't just go in there on the day. We talked about earlier how um, you wouldn't expect to hand somebody a musical instrument and then push them on stage and expect them to be able to play a recital. That's not going to work. You would never do that. So why would you do that for an interview? Why? Why would you expect somebody to just be able to walk into an interview with no practice and not panic? No, not going to happen. So you got to practice over time. Start slow, start small, a couple questions a day, refine your answers, get those grooves worn in your brain, and get those keywords so that you can just pull them straight out and have answers on tap for all these behavioral questions. That's going to make you feel so much better. So I talked in a previous stream about how I kind of started doing this um, in college. Uh, I had never been in an interview before, and so instead of waiting until I was applying for jobs, real jobs that I needed to live, I started in my sophomore year. When I was still just learning stuff before I even thought about getting real jobs. Um, there was a job fair, and I signed myself up for an interview just to see what it was like. I knew I wasn't going to get the job. I walked into that interview. I remember there were two guys, and we were in this little room, and I walked into the interview, and I was sweating so hard. And I walked in there, and I said to the two interviewers, I said, "Hi, thank you so much for your time. Um, I I understand that I'm just a sophomore. I'm really not necessarily prepared for a full-time job at this point. However, if possible, I would love to take the next 15 minutes of your time and just kind of do a practice interview and get used to the process. I hope that's all right with you." And they were happy to do it. They gave me the same interview they would have given anybody else, with the full knowledge from both parties that this was not going to lead to a job, but it did give me that practice. It let me see what interviews are like, and it was immensely helpful for me. Just getting past that first hurdle of what is it going to be like in an interview? What are they going to ask? What's the vibe like? And that was extremely helpful to just practice it with somebody. And I was wearing like a synthetic shirt that's like a silk kind of shirt, and I was sweating so hard I had like sweat stains all down the sides because I was so nervous. But just getting past that first hurdle of practicing was so helpful. Sauna shirt, yeah, it really was. Uh, Let me go back up here a little bit. Tell me about your dream job. What do you really want to do with your career? That's going to be different for each company, right? Dream job, what each company is offering. Yeah, so you don't want to be too on the nose about it. But I think for that question in general, what you're going to want to emphasize is your passion for development. So how think of all the things you've done to grow your skills as a developer in the last year or so. If you're in 100 devs, you've built projects, you've worked with clients, and all of these things you have done not because your job asked you to. You have done them in your free time. You have sacrificed your nights, you have sacrificed your weekends. And what is passion if not that? I mean, really, you could have been playing video games, but instead you're doing this. And so that is passion. And so that's what you want to emphasize for the dream job. And then the second half of that question, you can say, and as I grew my skills as a developer, I saw then you want to talk more specifically about some of the things this company is doing. And I mentioned earlier about definitely researching the company beforehand, understand some of the current initiatives they're undergoing. Are they pushing any major expansions, new departments, new things in the tech space that the company is excited about? You can mention those as kind of what drew you to this role specifically, to this niche. So you start out broad, talking about your passions, and then How are you focusing those passions on? Why are you focusing those passions on this particular company? That would be, so you're first you're creating that momentum, and then you're saying, all right, now why am I tossing all this momentum at this company? And yeah, it's going to be different for each company. It should be different for each company. Exposure therapy, exactly. Patacha says, I panic when cold emailing people to coffee chat with. Yeah, so I think it's important to kind of have a little perspective there when you're talking about emailing. What's the worst thing that's going to happen when you email somebody? They're going to say no. I mean, that's it, right? You send somebody an email, they don't want to chat with you, they say no, or they don't respond. Okay, there's a bunch more people out there. So sometimes when you're reframing anxiety as someone with anxiety and has gotten professional assistance for anxiety, something that can be helpful in some cases where you're anxious about a particular task can be reframing that task in terms of, okay, but seriously, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if I'm emailing somebody? The worst thing that's going to happen is that they don't want to talk to me and they say no. Okay, fine, I go on to my next person. Or they don't respond to me, maybe I follow up with them in a week or so. Okay, fine. Yeah, so reframing it in that way versus that. With anxiety, a lot of the times it can be the unknown can be the greatest uh, cause of anxieties. Oh no, I don't know what's going to happen. What's going to happen? I don't know. Well, okay, what is really going to happen? Either they say yes, they say no, or they don't respond. So, how do you handle each of those situations? Have a plan for that, and hopefully that will make it a little easier. Nikia says, how do you come up with stuff if you don't really have a work history that teaches you those skills? Jobs with not much change or discussion before now. Okay, so I'm curious, Nikia, can you share a little, can you be a little bit more specific? So, what is your history? What are some of the things that you've done in the past? What are some of the specific roles that you've had in the past? Let's think about those roles and how we can reframe that mindset a little bit. And Midhill suggests you can always talk about something that's not on your resume in the interview. Many times the interviewer will become interested in why you left it out. It gets them listening to a story you're telling versus having to come up with a rehearsed answer. Yeah, I think that kind of depends on how good you are at improvising. If you aren't good at improvising, then you might want to be careful about that, because you could get off on a tangent where you don't talk about yourself in the right way. So it depends on your personal communication style, I guess. Harry says, how to answer, tell me a time taken initiative, tell me a time taken initiative, challenge, leadership role type of questions. Um, so I feel like we've all taken initiative at some point. We've all had something at our work that we felt could be done better, um, or that we wanted to explore a little bit more, a time when we've improved our own processes at work, something that, in the existing process we found frustrating, or, like, why is it being done this way? And then you come up with a better solution and you implement it, even if it's just for yourself. Um, and hopefully we've had some time when we've taken the initiative in a group and maybe led that group or helped lead that group. And so if you can think about it in terms of that way, well, here's a time when I've been in my role for a while, and we'd followed these, this documentation, these processes, and over time, as I gained skills, I discovered, a way that this process could be done better, and so I refined that process, tried it out myself, and then documented that process so that people in this role in the future, could do it in a better way. If you want to, if you Harry, if you want to share some of your history, we could brainstorm some answers to those questions specifically. Red Sly says recommended in-demand programming languages. That can really depend on your area. You should do some research on job postings in your area and see what is in demand in your area. So a lot of the folks in this group that we are in, 100 Devs, we are learning the MERN stack for web development. And so that's, Mongo, Express, React, and Node. Um, and all of that obviously using JavaScript. So JavaScript in general is kind of an overall popular language. It's very flexible. It has a lot of implementations. Um, and so it's probably not a bad bet. But you should research the job postings in your particular country, in your particular area, and see what's in demand, and then apply yourself to what's in demand in your area or in the area where you want to work. Bought a new board game in May, but haven't opened it yet. That shows my passion. Yeah, I have in the past year since we started 100 Devs. I have bought so many games, and yeah, I still have all the games I bought on the Steam sale for Christmas last year, just like sitting unplayed. It's so sad. It's so sad. Gaps in work history. So, how you handle gaps in your work history um, could be handled in a variety of ways. It kind of depends on why you took those gaps. Maybe during those gaps, you could say you were freelancing, or you could say that you were focusing your time and refining your skills, and then list some specific ways that you refined your skills. What did you do in that downtime? Maybe if you were caring for a relative, you could say, I was um, taking some time to devote to my family and care for a relative, and now I'm back to applying my passion again in the workforce. And so the way you handle those gaps could really depend on why you had that gap in the first place. But again, you want to roll with it and make it a positive experience. Trizzy says, "Hi, Mindwolf. Thanks for another great stream. Leon often talks about spending a weekend to learn a language required by a new company. Have you had to do this, and what was your approach?" So kind of. So for the senior role that I have now, like I mentioned before, I was really not going to apply for it, or I wasn't going to put my hat in the ring. I didn't think I could get it. I took myself out of the game. I was like, nope, senior role, can't do it. Because at the time, I did know SQL. I knew SQL, which was the role was for a senior SQL developer. Um, but I hadn't used it in 3 years. For 3 years, I had been in a role that where I didn't use SQL at all. Didn't touch a line, didn't practice it. I mean, it wasn't the type of thing I was doing outside of work. SQL is not that type of a language. SQL is not really the type of language that lets you build exciting or pretty things. It is a very utilitarian language. So it's not super fun to just experiment with outside of work. Um, and so, I hadn't touched it in 3 years. And then all of a sudden, I kind of networked with the manager for this role. And then all of a sudden, I was moving into the interview process. And I was like, oh, crap. I haven't touched SQL in 3 years. Do I remember SQL? And so I kind of did spend those a few days prepping beforehand, reviewing join types, um, you know, practicing the syntax again, just kind of refreshing my brain, getting those cobwebs out of my brain on, okay, wait, how does SQL work again? Um, and so that was, in the end, that was really all I needed. I haven't ever had to learn anything from scratch over the previous weekend. And really, but what I spent most of my time on the weekend before that interview was behavioral. At the time, I didn't have the bank. This was before 100 devs. I didn't know the bank existed at the time. But what I did do was I went to a bunch of websites and I just Googled common interview questions. Like I just Googled that and I printed off, physically printed off a bunch of questions, drafted out some answers to those questions, and then just went through them. I just rehearsed behavioral questions, coming up with, like, I just wrote a few bullet points below each question about the types of things I would want to talk about if I was asked that question, and then I just practiced. I mean, that was the majority of what I did. Middle says, of all of the new people we hired at the engineering companies, a lot of them had done senior design projects. They talked about those as their experience. Yeah, and if you're in 100 devs, you'll have done a 100 hours project, a project that you should have spent 100 hours on. And so that's absolutely something that you can and should talk about in an interview. As a hiring manager for DevOps, welcome to the stream, by the way. As a hiring manager for DevOps, I ask people to explain the tech beyond buzzwords. I'm amazed how many people can't answer, tell me what Kubernetes is, and any more detail than it's a container orchestrator. If I press them, but yeah, what does that mean? They freeze up. Yeah. And so I think that that kind of goes to, before you go into an interview, make sure that you understand what the company focuses on. Make sure that you're not just um, being a generalist. You know, if you can research what that company does, understand why they're doing the things that they do, that can help. And like you say, in your case, when you're doing these interviews for DevOps, you want people to understand, okay, why do we use this? What is it for? And so doing that research can help. Mavi says, I haven't used PHP in 8 to 10 years. I don't know what this game is, but I think I win. You can still bring it back. You absolutely can. 99 hours went to the search bar. Hey, yeah. There ain't anything. A lot of people have a hang up about Googling. Like Googling is a bad thing, and it's really not. Googling is a skill. If you can show that you can Google effectively and find answers to questions, um, and you know that you can Google, know what to Google, and know which is the valid answer, then I mean that's an immensely valuable skill. I do that on the job all the time, and so do the people on my team who are, you know, 10 years my senior as far as experience. I am the least so, you know, I talked about how I got my job and how I felt like I wasn't qualified technically, and you know I am still I'm the least experienced person on my team. Although that's not entirely true. We just actually did hire somebody from with no prior SQL experience. This person got hired with no prior SQL experience. They're a business analyst, um, although they do have previous experience in the higher education space, but no prior SQL. So I guess I'm not the least experienced anymore. Um, but yeah, I mean, these all these people that have been doing SQL for 20 years on my team, they still Google stuff all the time. Maybe I should learn SQL. So I would say, so for those of us in 100 devs, you know, Leon says really just stick to the plan. Don't get yourself off in a million different directions trying to learn anything and everything. However, I will say, I might be a little biased. If you are going to go out and learn an additional skill, SQL is a pretty good one to have a basic grasp of. SQL is incorporated into a lot of different places. It's been around since the 70s, and so it's pretty much everywhere. There are more modern, you know, frameworks out there, MongoDB and NoSQL type stuff, but SQL is still pervasive, underpinning most databases and a lot of tools out there. And so, if you can, at the very least, if you can write basic SQL queries, that can get you pretty far. Demonstrating that you can write a select statement, that you understand what joins are. Um, that can get you pretty far. And it's pretty easy to learn. I actually have a stream on it. Exclamation point YouTube will get you my YouTube channel, and if you search SQL on my YouTube channel, I did a crash course introduction to SQL, teaches you all of the basics, um, how to do select statements, what different types of joins are, how to do basic inserts and deletes, and I mean, for a non SQL role, I mean that's pretty much all you need. Yeah, didn't realize it's been around since the 70s. SQL is an eternal dinosaur. It really is. Um, it's one of those legacy languages. You know, it's been around forever and just it's never going to go away. And if you, it kind of gets more obvious that it's kind of old the more you look at it, right? You know, it's all caps. It's you're writing out full words. It's yeah, it's got that sort of legacy look to it. But it still does. You know, it does what it says on the tin and it does it well. Middle says Google wasn't around when I started. Dead tree was the way to go at the time. Yeah, but you're still using the skills to do research, right? It's a similar skill set. You're still able to research and find what you need and then apply it. Harry says I'm currently studying at a university in New Zealand, wondering how likely it is to get a software engineering new grad role in the U.S. that sponsors visas. Yeah, if you need a visa, it's probably going to make it a little harder. Not saying it's impossible. Um, but you're really going to have your skills on point. You're going to have to show you're going to because it's probably going to be expensive for them to sponsor you. So you're going to want to show that you can repay that in the quality of your work. So you're going to want to have a polished GitHub, polished LinkedIn. It's going to have to be on point. Turn Down says a lot of jobs ask for SQL. They do. That's the thing. You're going to see that as a line, not necessarily as a main skill, but as one of those nice to have skills on a ton of different job postings. And so if you can learn a little bit of SQL in 3 hours by watching my stream, then you can get ahead. Jasmine says, I learned SQL over the 5 week break. Absolutely. Yeah, wonderful. SQL is kind of hot in my area as well as Angular. Figuring out what's hot in your area for sure. Yeah, yeah. No worries, MME. C was developed in that decade too. Yeah, so many of these languages, they're pretty much eternal. They're never, there might be other things out there that are supposed to replace them, but they're never going away. So my employer is fully a SQL shop. Like we don't do um, any NoSQL. All of our databases at my employer, massive, and I work for a major university, a modern research university. STEM, STEM focused modern university, and we're all SQL. So it's just about the right tool for the job, right? And SQL is still an excellent tool. Relational databases are still an excellent way to store data. And so they're going to be around forever. Eternal. Not that it's a bad thing. If it still works, then why not keep using it? It's still good. Middle says, I believe it started at IBM. I think an IBM scientist there wrote a paper about relational data modeling that spawned relational databases. Yeah, and originally the language that SQL is based on, I believe, was actually called SQL, like spelled out, and then SQL is the version 2 of that language. Yeah. Let's go ahead and take another break. So it's been another hour. Let's take another break. We're going to wrap up around 10. Um, sorry, 10 Eastern. So in 45 minutes, we'll probably wrap it up. However, we still got, another good, after the break, we got another good 35 minutes to keep talking and keep going through these questions. And I want to hear more histories from people. That's a structured query language. Yeah. I want to hear more histories from people and people who are struggling with making their histories, molding their previous work activities to meet the needs of these questions. I want to hear more of that. I want to help with that some more. So yeah, let's take 5 minutes, and then we'll keep chipping away at these questions. All right. 5 minutes on the clock. I'll see you back here in 5, and we'll finish strong. All right. Okay, folks, got about a minute left in the break, so come on back when you're ready. Get something to drink, do one more stretch, roll your wrists a little bit, hug your dog, and then come on back. Oh, did we get a raid? Oh my goodness. Hey, CM Griffin, thank you so much for the raid. Sorry it was during break. Thank you. I was sitting down and didn't even see it. Stretchy, stretchy indeed. Thank you for the raid. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the timer. Welcome, Raiders. I hope y'all are having an excellent day. We are doing more interview prep, talking about the behavioral aspects of acing an interview. Also, talking about if you don't have experience in tech, how to leverage your past experiences that may have nothing to do with tech and still effectively answer these questions. Because the secret is that these behavioral questions really don't have anything to do with tech. They don't have to. Um, you can. It's about being. It's about interpersonal relations, right? It's about how do you relate to other people? How do you adapt? How do you learn? How do you handle priorities? How do you handle stress? And folks in a lot of roles, I think, can relate to those concepts, especially service roles, customer facing roles. Um, yeah, y'all have so many opportunities to answer these questions effectively. Hey, burnt toast. Nakia says, my history is really short. Only a few months of being a line cook. Oh, that's a good one. And a security guard. Those are both great. Okay, so for a line cook, I assume you're in a restaurant environment of some kind. Um, and so I'm sure you had to deal with shifting priorities as orders come in. You might suddenly get a rush. You know, if you were working in like a say like a burger restaurant, you might suddenly get a whole soccer team that comes in and they all want burgers. Okay, how do you handle that? How do you prioritize your work? Um, I'm sure being a cook and working in a kitchen, you had to deal with interpersonal conflicts and interpersonal relations. So, what were some of those conflicts and how did you handle them? Did management have your back or did you have to handle it on your own? Did you work with, you know, if you worked with management, then how did you interact with management to solve those problems? If management didn't have your back, how did you handle it yourself? See more line cook stuff. So, yeah, priorities, stress, working with other people, working with other departments. So I'm sure you had to, you know, interface with front of house. Um, uh, how did you handle the process that you used as a cook? Did you improve that process at all? How did you improve it? How did you convince your management that it was the right way to improve that process? Increase efficiency, increase time saved. What did you do? Security guard, another good one. So if you're a security guard, you probably spend a lot of time on your own. So how did you self-manage? What were some of the skills you gained as a security guard to manage your time effectively? Make sure that you finished your patrol route or make sure that you were doing your job effectively, probably with very little supervision. That's a great plus. If you're a security guard, I mean, somebody's not watching you. You're supposed to be the one watching, right? So you can emphasize self-management in that aspect as well. So yeah, there's a lot to work with there. I hope that helps a little bit. Thank you for the follow, Pixo. Dr. Moto says, I've got a PhD in chemistry. Congratulations. But I'm just playing with web dev to see if I can make some freelance money. So I'm not really worried about interviews. Yeah, but this interview prep isn't necessarily for tech roles. It can be good prep for any role. Um, and being able to answer these types of questions confidently can make you more confident in communicating in general. And so it can make you better at talking to your clients too. Ruth says, I'm a student, but have had no experience. Okay, I wouldn't say that's true. As a student, do you talk to other people? As a student, do you do group projects in class, in the classes that you're taking? Do you do group projects? Um, as a student, have you ever had a conflict with someone? I'm sure that's happened at some point. So you can still answer a lot of these questions, but you don't have to specifically say, well, I don't have a lot of experience, because you do. You have life experience being a student. You might need to, reuse some experiences multiple times to answer these questions, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be repeating yourself. You can use different aspects from the same situation to answer different questions. Right? Don't snitch on yourself. You can recycle situations. Hackathon experience. Oh, that's amazing. You've done hackathons. That is so perfect. Because hackathons are stressful, they are fast paced. You are given a task and you have to solve it with a group, right? You have to quickly prioritize. You have to handle maybe things not going as planned, right? Something breaks last minute. How do you solve it? What creative solutions did you come up with in the moment to save the day? Or did you help someone else implement their creative solution? Is there a time when you were at a hackathon and something wasn't going well? The team pulled together, and maybe the solution that you all ended up implementing wasn't something that you agreed with initially, but in order to accomplish the goal, you gave it your all anyway, and you contributed to that project. How can you spin that to show that you're a good learner, you're adaptable? Really mine that experience to answer these questions. No worries, Nikia. Yeah, it's about just thinking about these experiences in a different light, right? Sometimes you just need somebody else to reframe it for you. Oh, thank you, Nikia. I think I kind of I think I've gotten good at it, just kind of out of necessity. Um, Coming into I have a really varied sort of eclectic background, and so I've really had to mine those experiences every time I apply to a new role to convince someone that I am the correct choice for the role, right? And I think too, um, I have a slight visual impairment, so my eyes don't. If I look straight at the camera, you'll be able to see it. I can't really look someone in the eye, so I don't really necessarily have the physical ability to look someone in the eye consistently. It's a somewhat distracting visual impairment, and so I have to be very good at selling myself in other ways without necessarily having that 100% great physical impression. And so that's another thing that I'm conscious of as well. That's just a deficiency that I have going into any interview that I participate in. And so I have to be good at saying why I am the correct person for this role, and sort of get past any initial unconscious biases that the person interviewing me might have based on my appearance alone. Winter says, I don't have the mental ability to do that. Anybody can, it's a learned skill, just like anything else. I'm not special. None of this is inherent. It's practiced. And that's the crucial thing, is that it's a skill that you can gain if you practice doing it. The hackathon I participated in had me using skills that I had, but were way outside the scope of straight development. That doesn't mean that they're bad. Again, these behavioral questions, if you're talking about the concept of behavioral questions, it's fine if they're outside the scope of straight development. How did you apply those skills? It doesn't really matter what the skills were specifically. How did you apply them? How did you work with the group to show that to implement these skills and come up with a solution? It's less about like I did X, Y, and Z, and more about how did you do it. Hey, Techie, welcome. Just joined. Thanks for doing this stream. If you haven't already, how can I craft my story being a mom with no work experience at all? Just some teaching. Okay, that's great. You were a teacher. Awesome. I have a CS degree. Awesome. Though I never used it. I did some babysitting and matchmaking for families. So you were a teacher, and being a teacher is an incredible skill to have. So I'm sure you have a lot of situations that you can. I'm sure you have a lot of situations that you can mine just from your teaching experience alone. So the crucial thing, you may have been a teacher 20 years ago, but when you're answering these behavioral questions, is there anything in any of these questions that requires you to talk about how long ago the situation happened? Do you see anything saying how many years ago was this? No. No. So it's fair game. You don't got to say, well, 20 years ago I was in this situation with this project and these people, or 20 years ago I had a conflict with a coworker. No, you don't have to say that. You can talk about it like it happened, last year, right? So you don't have to snitch on yourself as far as how long ago these experiences were. Um, hey, Vibrant Neon, welcome. No, you're fine, Vibrant Neon. Thank you for your contribution. So yeah, definitely mind your experiences as a teacher. There's a lot of teachers that go into being developers because you already know how to handle stress. You already know how to handle priorities. You already know how to, herd cats, as they say, like, keeping a bunch of little children in line or big children. Um, and so, yeah, if you can mind your teaching experiences, those are fantastic. Um, Let me see, what else did you say? Blah, 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 blah. Being a mom, yeah. So being a mom is great. So you've had to handle schedules. Yep, you've had to construct schedules for a group. I'm sure you've had to deal with unexpected situations as a mother. Um, and so you can talk about it in general terms, leading a team, scheduling that team, dealing with unforeseen situations, to, guide your children, that kind of thing. Um, so the CS degree, yeah. So during when you were getting that CS degree, talking about the skills you gained in that degree. um, I did some babysitting and matchmaking. So, you know, handling your own children as well as somebody else's children, that gives you a lot of situational awareness. Again, handling stress, handling competing priorities, um, convincing others to accept your ideas. Right, children are sometimes the hardest to convince of what needs to be done. So how do you do that? What are the skills you gained in negotiating with tiny humans? Um, yeah. So highlighting the skills that you gain without necessarily focusing on the large amount of time that you were not necessarily participating in the workforce. Um, so saying like, look, I'm still a skilled individual. I can do all these things. Um, I've got the skills. Allow me to demonstrate them. Uh, and Piece of Shoot says 100 hours project would be crucial. Yeah, and so if you are in 100 devs, techie, uh, yeah, you're going to want to highlight that 100 hours project is showing like, yes, even though, while I was doing all these other things, while I was babysitting, while I was taking care of my children, I still devoted the time to develop my passion for web development and build this amazing project. And, I can demonstrate the features of this project and what I learned while I was developing it. And Mittel mentions, sounds like the mom has some people skills. Absolutely. Being a mother, and taking care of children, especially children that aren't yours, definitely, yeah, definitely forces you to develop your people skills. Techie says, do we have to say we built a software when we were not working? Did you? I mean, I don't know if you're in 100 devs or not. Have you built something during the time when you weren't working? I'm not saying that you have to say that, but if you did build something, then absolutely do. Yeah, you should talk about it. But if you didn't, then don't say that you built something when you didn't, because they're going to want to say, oh, what did you build? And you're going to be like, Instead, if you haven't applied your development skills at all, um, during the time when you weren't working, then again, really hammer on those soft skills and the types of things that the people skills that you have in order to interface well with others. And if you can emphasize your ability to learn and adapt, that would probably be a good thing to focus on as well. So yeah, Techie. I mean, I don't know your specific situation. No projects till they start. Okay, good, good, good. Yes, absolutely. You're fine then. You're good. You said you haven't built anything, but you're in 100 devs. You've been building things this entire time. If you're participating in 100 devs, you're building things. And so again, you don't have to say I didn't build anything. I didn't build anything thing because you've been building things this entire time in 100 devs. I'm assuming you have a GitHub, you have your projects on that GitHub. Clean that sucker up, talk about those projects, talk about the skills that you learned. So you're fine. You've got plenty of projects. Yeah, and again, you don't have to talk about time frames. Don't snitch on yourself. You don't got to talk about time frames. Focus on the things you've accomplished that show your passion for this field, right? Don't be like, well, I had kids and I didn't do anything. Be like, no, I raised a family and I accomplished all these things and I built all these amazing projects while raising that family, showing my true passion for this field. Yeah, it's all about you. It's all about how you frame it, right? Thank you for the follow, Vibrant Neon. Appreciate it. You can spin anything positively. Yeah. It's about thinking about yourself in a positive way and emphasizing the positive aspects of the things that you've done. Middle says, my boss used to tell me that he considers a degree just showing that you were able to follow through with something. He was an electrical engineer and said that he would have trained most new engineers on what they need to do. Yes, 100%. Yes. So, for example, I do have a college degree. However, it's in statistics, and I hated it. So because I was a glutton for punishment, apparently, I never liked math in high school or elementary school, but I chose I chose a degree in college that's almost entirely math because I thought the more I threw myself at it, the better I would get at it, and that was not true. So I did not have a fun time in college, and I also didn't do any coding in college at all. None, zero, not a zilch. I took one coding class and I barely passed it only because I had a good group and they dragged me along in the group project. It did not go well overall. And so, yeah, my college degree really has not given me any worth on the job. It's all about the skills that I picked up while I was working and learning things from my manager. Being trained on the job has given me the like 99% of my worth that I currently have. There's something ingrained in society that tends to push people down. Um, yeah, like for example, the way that labor is called unskilled, which is, again is not true. You have to remember that most skills are transferable. Yes, in particular, the skills from those unskilled roles, those are oftentimes, the most demanding and the most forged in fire type roles that really get you up to speed on how the world works and give you some excellent behavioral skills that you can transfer to other roles. Yeah. But yeah, and what employers want is they want someone that they can mold and train and shape into the perfect employee. And a lot of times when you get hired, they're going to have, you're not going to be expected to really produce anything for a couple months. Like I mentioned earlier, we just hired 3 new developers onto my team at work, 3 new people. Um, from all like they have a really variety of backgrounds. One of them was a COBOL programmer for several years. One of them is coming from a PHP, like a web developer PHP background and going into SQL, and the other one was previously a business analyst. So they come from all 3 different backgrounds, and they're all just training. They've been training for a couple months now, and they're we're not expecting them to contribute anything to the current projects. We're just expecting them to listen and learn how things work. Piece of Shoot says, your history matters. I see so many people in retail jobs that buy in on the lie that they don't have skills. Yes. And so that's why I love when people here in chat mention that they have some kind of a service industry job. Retail, service, food service, I don't want to leave anybody out. Any kind of service industry job is incredible for answering these types of questions and doing really well in an interview because you've seen it all. You've dealt with it all types of situations, all types of people. You have so much to mine there as far as like things that you can say in an interview, examples you can give, probably, way more than I do. Um, because I was just sitting in a cube farm for a lot of my background is sitting in cubicles, which is not necessarily the most fruitful for types of answers to these types of questions. So again, got to be creative, think creatively. But yeah, service jobs are great for that. I could never do that. I mean, dealing with customers on a regular basis, yeah, that's so hard. Absolutely. Um, yeah, I don't think I could do it either. I've done it for short periods at times, but um, yeah, no. Piece of She says over a decade working remote now. I feel you. Yeah. Jag Tony says, I'm so ready for a cubicle and to get off the sales floor. Yeah, absolutely. And that can kind of maybe give you some of that drive to really be successful in these interviews too, showing that passion of, yes, this is where I want to be. And I have plenty of reasons to want to be here. And so I'm going to be the best fit for this role you could possibly ask for because you're not just walking in here as just another interview. You want to be here, you want this role, you this is where you want to be, and that'll come across in that interview. Yeah. Okay, we got about 20 minutes left. Again, anybody with a background they're not sure how to translate into a job interview, not sure how to shape that background to answer these over here, I guess, these behavioral questions that are on the screen right now. Um, Anybody not sure how to pull apart pull apart aspects of their history to meet the needs of these questions. These are, and for those of you who are new for the raid, these types of questions are the types of quote unquote soft skilled questions that are going to be asked really often in interviews for tech roles. So in an interview for a technical role, they might give you a coding challenge just to make sure that you've got the basic skills, but the point is not that you can solve the challenge. The point is that you show how you approach a challenge and can you communicate and can you work with other people? Can you adapt? Can you learn? And that's what they want. Trizzy says, a funny, I worked in retail and received nothing but credit cards. Um, One day somebody gave me 40 bucks in cash and I forgot how to ring up cash. Yeah, and if you were having a really good back and forth with your interviewer, that could be a funny story that you might bring up at some point. Yeah, you can have fun in interviews too. It's kind of reading the room. If you're having a fun kind of back and forth, if they seem like a kind of a cool kind of a vibe that they're putting off, you can be fun. You can be funny. You can lighten the mood a little bit. You can get them to like you, if you can crack a joke here and there. But as long as you're not unprofessional about it, yeah, it's kind of a difficult line to walk, right? What else? Somebody else has got to have a completely bonkers background out there, and I really want to hear about it. Just wild off the wall, or even okay. I want two things. I want somebody with a bonkers background, and I want somebody with who's got the most unremarkable, like quote unquote boring background, or thinks they have the most boring background that couldn't possibly have anything in it that would allow them to answer these types of questions. Who's got the most interesting? Who's got the most boring? I say quote unquote boring because it's really not, but you might think it is. I want to hear it. Because if I was talking about my background I could spin my background as pretty boring. I went to college, got a statistics degree. I graduated absolutely middle of the road, not a super awesome GPA. Um, I got a job out of college literally on the eighth floor in a cube farm in the middle of a completely, nondescript bunch of cubes, and I did Excel spreadsheets all day. Um, and then my next job, I worked in a factory and I looked at orders on a screen all day. And then I got another job where I looked at more spreadsheets all day. And now I look at code all day. So, you can make anything sound boring, you make anything sound interesting. Ooh, index controller says truck driver. Okay, yeah, we had another truck driver earlier. So, yeah, okay. Truck driver, I'm not sure if you're going for the interesting or the boring one there. I don't know, because it could be either one, right? So truck drivers, I feel like you have to deal with a lot of uncertainty being a truck driver. So I don't, admittedly, I've never been a truck driver, but from what I understand, you're kind of given your cargo manifest and you have to get it there safely and quickly, but within a fairly strict set of rules, right? You have certain rules about when you can rest, how far you can drive without a break. And so you really have to plan your route accordingly, and you are held to like I say, you're held within a framework of rules, and you have to figure out how to work effectively within those rules that you're given and work independently, right? You got to be independent, you got to be efficient, and abide by the rules. And so that can be, I'm sure, a difficult line to walk sometimes. And then you got to deal with unexpected situations, weather, accidents, detours. Um, you know, a-hole drivers on the road, right? How do you handle those things? How do you deal with those uncertain situations and still get your cargo in on time? And then when you get the cargo to the destination, I'm sure there's interpersonal conflicts that happen there. What happens if you get to your destination and there's another truck taking up the loading dock and they've been there forever, or the person who's supposed to accept the cargo um, isn't ready, or they're not prepared, or um, they don't have the right space allocated for that cargo. What do you do? How do you handle that? Who do you talk to? Do you talk to their management, your management? So there's all sorts of room there for mining those situations in order to find answers to these questions. Yeah, there's a ton of aspects to being a truck driver. Turn down. What about this is hurting you? The looking at spreadsheets all day that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, I think being a truck driver is an extremely interesting job. Yeah, I don't think it's boring at all. I hope that hopefully maybe gives you a different, a little bit more, helps you think about that role in a slightly different way. Index. Going to start job interviews very soon. Yeah. So what I would suggest is start thinking about your job as a truck driver in terms of the skills that you use on a regular basis. And we kind of talked earlier about how some things may seem easy. Some of the tasks that you do every day may seem easy, but that doesn't mean that they aren't difficult in themselves. You're just good at it. So, what makes you so good at these tasks? What makes you good at being a truck driver? What skills have you gained along the way? I don't know how long you've been a truck driver, but what skills have you gained along the way or cultivated that have made you so good at what you do? And what are the specific situations that you face regularly? How do you handle those situations? Um, yeah, how have you improved your job over time? Think about it in terms of that. Cube farm spreadsheet nightmare. I love spreadsheets. Hey, I'm going to say it. Excel is an amazing tool, and I'm not going to listen to anybody who says otherwise. Excel, it friggin' rules. Excel is the best. I want to do a whole stream on Excel sometime. I really do. Um, after 100 devs is over. Yeah, Excel gang rise up. Absolutely. Excel is the best. It's so powerful, so fun. Malvi says, I worked in a foreign country for most of my work history. Okay. I'm sure you still, and even these things still happen in other countries. Interpersonal relationships are everywhere, so you can still talk about these types of things. You don't have to say where, in what country it happened. Or you could also, for to make yourself stand out a little bit, you could talk about um, cultural any sort of cultural challenges that you've had to overcome. um, I don't know if you've encountered any of that, but thinking about cultural conflicts or times when you approached a situation from a particular culture but that wasn't the correct approach, and so how did you learn from that? Yeah, that could be a little bit of additional flavor to add to your particular experience. Uh, Mittel says, I helped in my parents' auto repair shop for 6 years during high school. Went to college for EECSE, didn't finish, started in IT. 2 companies ago, I was on a software development project that I was listed on 5 patents. Yeah. Like you say, Mittel, your background really doesn't matter. It's what you do. How can you show that you can do the work? There's a lot of folks in IT that didn't finish their degree, aren't using the degree. So my manager right now, my manager has a college degree in sociology. He said it. He's like this has nothing to do with what I do right now. I've never used it, but yeah, my manager has a degree in sociology. Um, uh, one of my other coworkers has a degree in English, I think, or something like I don't know, history English. I don't know, something like that. Yeah, so it really doesn't matter. And one of the most skilled Cognos, which is a visualization tool, kind of like Tableau. One of the most skilled Cognos developers that I know does not have a college degree at all. She went as far as high school and never went any farther, and she's incredibly skilled and incredibly senior as well. Yeah. Is anyone shocked she loves spreadsheets? Spreadsheets are the bomb. They're awesome. Yeah, Piece of Shoot says just did a funny Google search to exemplify a bit on how to sell something boring. Single handedly manage the successful upgrade and deployment of new environmental illumination system with zero cost overruns and zero safety incidents. That's a positive spin on I changed a light bulb. So, even better, you could incorporate into that statement, you could incorporate process improvements if you upgraded an incandescent light bulb to an LED light bulb. So you could also emphasize the savings on electricity costs and energy efficiency if changing that light bulb you also upgraded from an incandescent to LED. So even more, you could talk about even more there. Piece of Shit says, second time I had burnout, I quit my job and went to live on a beach for 2 months in a tent with some friends. That's rad. Yofi says, I did not go to college. Yeah, so many people didn't. Yep. But you can still be successful. And that's what I love about tech is I think that's kind of a unique field in that regard, right? Where it's not considered as important that you have that specific high school to college pipeline. Um, it really isn't. Yeah, most developers are self-taught to some degree. Absolutely. I'm hoping to get to the point where I can code and travel and live off that, or live in a van down by the river. Yeah. Yeah, it's, the point is to get to the point where you can be self-sufficient and live the life that you want, right? Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'm finally getting to that point. And I hope to get farther along as well. I feel like I'm fairly finally feeling pretty self-sufficient, and can mostly live the life that I want. Yeah, that's the goal for all of us. And Detroit says, I've learned a lot of analytics for my job: Excel, Power BI, Tableau. Awesome. Yeah, I love all those things. Um, Not what I went to college for. That's fine. I want to leverage this for my behavioral answers, but I'm worried about getting offered more roles like these instead of dev roles. Do you think this is a valid concern? Yeah, I mean, it could be. It depends on how much you emphasize the specific tools that you were using. So you don't have to. You don't have to say, so talking about like for example, question 7, give an example of an important project goal you reached and how you reached it. You don't have to say, yes, so I was tasked with implementing a Tableau connection to our Power BI backend, and then and then how you achieved it. You don't have to say that. You can say, I was tasked with setting up a visualization tool to a database backend, and then talk about more about the way that you interfaced with the people to accomplish the goal, how you scheduled those goals, how you set a timeline, how you gathered requirements, um, the specific sort of softer steps that you took to accomplish that goal without going into a ton of technical detail. So without using a bunch of specific buzzwords, or identifying specific tools, you can shy away from that and keep things more general. So you can control how much you share about those previous tools that you've used. Again, you set the pieces on the game board in order to create the most optimal strategy for yourself. So you can be more general and still answer these questions effectively. Yeah. Yeah, and you might want to also be careful about that on your resume as well, how much you emphasize that if that's truly something you want to shy away from. Um, I would say maybe still leaving like the Power BI stuff on there, and especially if working in Excel, if you did any like VBA, if you programmed your own macros, you could talk about that specifically. Talking about programming stuff with VBA, and any maybe the work that you did with Power BI, just to emphasize more of the dev skills. But I don't know. Yeah, no worries. Okay, we got about 5 minutes left. We got time to like answer like two or three more questions. Yeah, I won't be checking out your website on stream, Yofi. That's not really what we're here for today. But maybe I'll take a look at it later. Tristan says I worked at uni too. Because of the nature of the business and having to address students' highly varied concerns, opens the conversation to how fast you can turn on a dime. Yeah. So anytime when you have to interface with the public, um, you're going to be faced with a bunch of weird situations, usually in rapid succession. Right. You never know what's coming next, and so that shows specifically that shows your adaptability, um, your ability to respond to social situations in a healthy way, right? You take on that student's concern, you address the concern, and then you approach the next student's concern, in a fresh way, right? You're not carrying that baggage to the next student. And so yeah, thank you for the follow, Dave in DC. But yeah, that's a great. Honestly, any role where you work with the public, any kind of service role where you work with the public is just fantastic for these questions. Thinking about those interactions, um, you have a gold mine there. And so, if anybody is still has been in a service role or has a service background and is still struggling with how that can help them answer these types of questions, I mean, let me know because you got gold there. No worries, Dave. I'm glad I could help. Hey, welcome, Black Swordsman. Welcome to the stream. Good to have you here. Definitely check out our Discord for 100 devs. It's super active, super fun. Oh, thank you for the redemption there. We got to stretch. Yes. All right. Here we go. Oh, yeah. I also got I also got a flu shot and a COVID shot today in both arms. So yeah, that stretch actually felt pretty good because I'm pretty sore. So thank you for that. All right, we got time for just a couple more questions. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Running on steam. Yeah, really. Oh, gotta hydrate. Okay. How to get a job? I would highly suggest checking out 100 Devs because it is truly a pipeline to. It's not just teaching you how to code; it's teaching you how to get a job. So you might already know how to code, and that's fine. But learning how to get a job is a skill in itself, as we've been talking about for the past 3 hours. Right? It's a game, and you got to know the rules. You got to learn the rules, and you got to practice it. And so I would suggest, getting access to the bank, which we've been reviewing here, practicing these questions, behavioral questions. So if you already have the technical skills, that's amazing. That's awesome. You said you're a front end developer, freaking rad. That's great. Now figure out how to sell it in an interview and talk about your behavioral skills as well. Because knowing how to code is one thing, but if you can't sell that skill to an interviewer, then you're not going to get the job. And Turn Down says, we're all here because we have the same question. Yeah, absolutely. Black Swordsman says, I have a problem to understand how the front and the back end communicate, how they send data to each other. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of different ways that could happen, right? It depends on what stack you're using, what tools you're using, and that kind of thing. But generally, requests get sent to the back end. The back end fulfills those requests and then sends a response. So in general, something on the front end triggers a request to be sent to the back end, some logic on the back end, maybe talks to a database, grabs some data, does something to that data, transforms it in some way, and then sends a response back to the front end to say that request has been fulfilled and here is your information. And so, just in very general terms, that's how that can happen. If you want to learn more about how to build and work with full stack applications and develop your own applications as well, um, do exclamation point Leon here in chat, and feel free to check out 100 devs. It takes people from for free. There's no fees or costs here. It's a free course on Twitch and YouTube, and it takes you from zero coding experience to learning how to build full stack web applications, and then how to get a job afterwards. And again, it's fully free. Education should be free. That's my philosophy, and that's also the philosophy of the person that runs the course. And so, yeah, there's no harm in checking it out. Check out the Discord, ask your questions, um, and yeah, have some fun. No worries at all, swordsman. And also, the classes are super fun too. Leon has a great vibe. Turn down, yeah, and that's a great point. Turn down. So in the U.S. especially, we charge people so much for education, but having an educated and informed populace pays for itself, right? So if you can teach, the more people you can teach for free, the better off you're going to be in the long run. And so, any chance we have to teach others without expecting anything in return in the moment will lead to a long-term payoff for everyone. Oh, Nikia says, did you go over how you would answer number 6? If so, I'll people up. Let's look at number 6. So we didn't talk specifically about number 6, but again, we need to think about why the question is being asked. So why is this question being asked specifically? Well, it's being asked specifically to determine how you deal with failure. Can you approach failure in an emotionally mature way? Or also, can you look at a past situation and analyze it successfully and without bias? So without trying to say, well, it only didn't work because everybody else on the project sucked, or it only didn't work because it was just luck. It didn't work. I was great. I did everything right, and it was just random chance it didn't work. No, it's talking about, can you analyze and learn from past experiences? Can you approach failure with maturity? And if things didn't go well, were you able to adapt and grow from that experience? So you can talk about failure. Failure is okay to talk about. Failure is okay to talk about. And I think that's, people go into an interview thinking they want to sell themselves, um, 100% positively all the time. And no. You can talk about times when you failed, and you should talk about times when you failed. But the important thing is that you follow that up with what you learned from it and how you grew from it and how you stop that from happening again. So again, it's about thinking about the motive behind the question. In this case, the motive behind the question is, can you approach failure with maturity? Can you do self-reflection and analyze your past experiences in a non-biased way? And can you show that you can learn and grow from past experiences? We're beautiful tree people, we learn and grow. Yeah, absolutely. So I think all of us at some point in our professional lives have had projects that have not um, had projects that have not panned out for some reason, and it may not have been our fault. We may have given our 100% effort, and maybe terrible management tanked a project, maybe politics tanked a project, maybe technical problems that were not our fault tanked a project. But we were still a part of that project, and I'm sure we learned something, right? Even if it was how to work with the correct people to get a project across the finish line, right? And so again, thinking about why the question is being asked and how to approach it and to show yourself in the best possible light. Mine will say if a person, Black Swordsman says, if a person never acknowledges his mistakes, he will never improve. Yes. And so, but in an interview setting specifically, it's tempting to not want to talk about the times when things have gone badly. Um, but with questions like this, you're being specifically asked to talk about a time when things went badly, right? And so that might throw people for a loop because they're like, but in an interview, I thought I'm supposed to only talk about things I did well, right? So how the heck do I even answer this? Well, you answer it honestly, but spin it in such a way that shows your maturity and growth. Let's see who asked that question. Oh, Nikia, does that help? Does that help you approach that question a little bit more easily? Awesome, good. And then Turn Down says, yes, we didn't tank the project, but we learned from the tanking. Yeah. And it's also about, can you break a failure down into its component parts and still extract something good out of it? Yeah. Because some people that maybe aren't as emotionally mature, they might just want to trash the project and forget it and move on, right, without trying to see if there's anything they can salvage. And so again, it's checking. It's this question is really layered, and it's checking for a lot of things. um, One of which is emotional maturity. Turnan says, "You really got this down pat." Again, it's practice. I don't do this naturally. This is a lot of it is, and a lot of it is practicing live with you all. Um, just because of the questions that you all ask in chat, I'm constantly being, compelled to read these questions again, to look at them again, to think about them in different ways, to think about them from different perspectives, to think about them from somebody else's perspective who I've never lived before. And so I'm getting tremendous practice, just reviewing these questions live with you all. I hope you all are getting an equal benefit as well. Thank you for the follow, Yofi. All right. Well, we're here. We're probably going to wrap up here very shortly. I think this has been an excellent conversation that we've had. Feel free to ask any last questions. Otherwise, I think we'll go ahead and see if we can find someone that we can potentially raid. Um, Thank you for all the new folks that joined us this evening. There were quite a few. I hope you want to come back for another stream. This is not what we do every stream, but this is something we do like to do periodically. Now, normally my stream topics tend to be more technical. We'll build projects or we'll learn data structures and algorithms, but it's important to give equal weight to not only how we learn these technical skills, but also how we sell them when it really matters, right? How do we sell them in an interview? And so this is something we do periodically. Feel free to check out my Twitch channel for some of my past streams. Again, all of my older streams are on YouTube. Exclamation point YouTube in chat if you want to link to my YouTube channel to see some of the past stuff I've talked about before, mostly web development related, with a SQL stream in there as well. But yeah, my Twitch schedule is Wednesdays and Sundays. Yeah, I hope to see some of you again on my next stream as well. All right, let's find someone that we can potentially raid and spread the love. All right, let me get this pulled up. I would love to keep talking with you all, but I have to go feed my foster kittens because they are on a schedule. Every 3 hours, baby. Day or night. Yeah, and hopefully for additional incentive, I hope to be able to show you one of those kittens on Sunday. Yeah, they're little sprouts. They're 3 weeks old ish, three ish weeks old, but they're little potatoes. So they're super chunky. All right, Aroni, raid. Let's see. Ooh, we got a lot of good choices today. Um, thank you, Klondike. Yeah, no, it's super rewarding. I love fostering. Um, Let's fluff their little. Oh, they've got plenty of fluff to fluff. Their heads are their heads and their bodies are extremely fluffy. I can't wait to show them to you. So come back Sunday to see one. Okay, so we've got choices. Yeah, they are super squeaky little potatoes. We've got Freckled Science, who is always fun. We've got Eduardo. I think they might be doing Spanish language only streams right now. Team Vash, they are doing game development. Midnight Simon, they are doing Pomodoro study stuff, I think, nowadays. So, quiet study time. Um, and Nikwan, they are kind of they do some variety stuff, but they do like statistics and stuff for a baseball team, I believe. So any suggestions um, on who you'd like to raid? Otherwise, I'll just probably pick somebody. Um, but yeah, or anybody else that's not on this list that you'd like to suggest, preferably in the software and game development category. Choice paralysis. Oh, is Coding with Strangers on? Why are they not on the list? Why do I not see them? Oh, we got to do Coding with Strangers. You're my bro. Oh, okay. We're going to Coding with Strangers. They're super fun. I love them. All right. They are learning how to code with strangers. And yeah, super good vibe. So let's do them. All right. I will see you all again on Sunday, or, well, actually tomorrow for class if you're in 100 devs. So see you there. Have a good one. All right. Raid is starting. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I will see you all again Sunday. Have a great evening. Talk to you soon.